Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
All right, what's happening?
Not much.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Mo, introduce yourself.
My name is Mo Jassim. I'm the head organizer of ADCC 2019.
And for people who don't know what ADCC is, Abu Dhabi Combat Club. When was that founded? In 2000?
No, 1998 was
98.
the inaugural one.
That was the first one.
Yeah, way back in the day.
That's pretty wild. When you think about like the UFC starting in 93, and that's where everybody really got excited about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then Abu Dhabi only five years later.
Yeah, because, I mean, the owner and creator...
Pull this sucker right up
Sorry.
your face. It moves around. You can
Okay.
grab it. You don't have to.
Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Hold on 1 second, sorry.
Yeah.
What's the matter?
I'm not recording his mic on accident.
Oh.
Wrong one.
Start again?
No, it's good.
Did you record it at all?
Hold on now.
But was
It
he
going through
recorded
the wrong-
before?
I was just going through the wrong input. I have it on a different thing. I'll take care of it.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
it's
okay.
good.
All right, we're good.
All right.
So 1998 it started, and why did they? Why no gi back then was very unpopular.
100%. It's sort of an interesting story how it started. So the owner and creator of ADCC is Sheikh Tahnoon, and he was going to college in the 90s in San Diego. UFC comes out in 1993. He gets hooked on it, and he just starts training, walks into a jiu-jitsu school in San Diego and starts training. He hides his identity. No one knows who he is, not even his instructor. He just goes by the name of Ben. And then...
That's pretty gangster.
yeah, like literally no one knows who he is except a few people. So he graduates, I believe, in 1995, goes back, and then tells everybody who he actually really is. And, you know, he starts creating this rule set. And you're right, no gi back then was just pretty much non-existent. So he went against the grain, and he did something interesting, sort of like what the UFC did. You know, the original UFCs, it wasn't mixed martial arts. It was art versus art. And that was the concept of ADCC. Judo guys versus jiu-jitsu guys versus sambo, et cetera, et cetera. So he created this rule set. And then in 1998, the first ADCC happened in Abu Dhabi.
It was really interesting because back in the day, it was frowned upon to have no gi competitions. Like Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys wanted you to train and compete only in the gi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you started in the gi, right?
I started in the gi. The first like 2.5 years was only in the gi, and then I made a transition to no gi.
When year did you make the transition?
So I started in 2011. So 2014 is when I really started to make the transition. And then by like late 2015, then it was like pretty much all no gi because I didn't have any gi training partners. Eddie Cummings, Gary, like all the competitors at Henzo's, at least John's students, were all no gi guys.
Eddie Cummings, has he vanished?
I have no idea what happened to
I
him.
went to his Instagram the other day to see what he was up to.
He
And I was
posted like 3 years ago. Yeah. He stopped training with us, and then he was training for a while at Unity, and then I haven't talked to him. I don't even know if he's still training. Like he had a PhD in physics, so I heard he like started teaching again. He's got like a normal job now. I have no idea. So maybe he's trains, maybe he doesn't, but he definitely doesn't compete anymore.
So weird. He was so talented.
He was. He went in and was crushing EBIs and had really good, tough ADCC matches. He had that super close match against Tanquinho. And then, he just, like, after the EBI with Gio, where he lost to Gio, he just, like, we didn't see him anymore after that.
Wow. Crazy. But, you know, it's such a wild sport, and it does so much damage to your body. You know, so many guys, I mean, everybody that I talk to years later, they're like, oh, I got 2 discs replaced in my neck. I got this going on. I got that going on.
Because everything we do is concave shoulders, like with the shoulders coming forward. I can't do like anything overhead. I can't like wash the back of my neck because my shoulders are I'm always inverting doing this. It's like anything like this I can do, but I can't bridge, like trying to scrub my back of my head. I'm like, can't get my shoulders back there. So it's just like all a mess. And I'm only 27, so once I'm 40, I'm going to be fucked.
But I think you could probably fix that.
Yeah, I could. I'm just lazy. I'm just like,
you saying you're lazy is hilarious. That is hilarious.
every day I go to watch like John teach, and I'm like, just sit up straight. And then I do it for like 30 seconds. I'm like, my back is tired. And then I just like end up sitting like this the whole class. My fucking head's like leaning forward. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, you got to wonder like what, I mean, who's who's been able to do it the longest? Like, what's the longest running like competitor?
I would say there's Andre Galvao.
I mean,
actually.
Andre, I
Yeah.
would say Andre. Because, I mean, he's competing, since he's 16?
He's
and
been
40?
at the highest levels for 20 years. I saw him in the early 2000s. There was a documentary called Arte Suave. He was a brown belt back then. This was like 2001, 2, or 3, and here he is.
How old is Andre now?
He's got to
He's
be
40.
close to 40, right?
I think he's 40. I think he'll be 40 for this ADCC.
Is that his last one?
Well, last year was supposed to be his last one, but then he came back for this one. So I'm going to plan to make sure that it's his last one.
When you do these matches, since you've been doing these no time limit matches like the Felipe match, which I think you really shine in those matches, but that's really for the cognoscente.
Yeah.
You know, that's really for the hardcore people that want to
Yeah,
see.
it's not spectator friendly.
Right.
It's just to determine who's better at jiu-jitsu. But no time limit matches for spectators are just atrocious because who the fuck wants to watch 4 hours of jiu-jitsu? Like, most people don't want to watch 10 minutes of jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So who wants to watch like a 2-hour match? But they're important to have sometimes just to show who's the best because you actually have to do jiu-jitsu and know how to do submissions. Well, not in the Felipe match because there wasn't a submission, but you have to be better at jiu-jitsu than the other guy. There's no stalling and playing tactics for 10 minutes and winning by advantage or 2 points. So they have their place, but to build the sport to a spectator sport is not. No time limit's not the way.
Well, it's not the way for spectators, but it is the way, as you said, to determine who's the best. And I think that's supposedly what jiu-jitsu is all about. Really, the early days of the UFC, there was no time limits because it was just like who wins. And that's the purest form of any martial art. It's like, you know, as soon as you have rounds, then you have people gaming the system. They try to win the round by sprinting in the last 30 seconds and really going hard, or, you know, trying to figure out a way to manage your time. You can't really do that if there's no time limit.
Which I think that has a place too, like points and rounds and stuff, because then you have the whole tactical element which comes into play.
Yeah.
But I think there's a place for both for sure. But spectators definitely need a time limit. They want to know like when this is going to be over. I
It
got
would be
work tomorrow.
fucking wild, though, if all UFC fights had no time limit in this day and age. I mean, they would be brutal.
Yeah.
Didn't Hoist have like an hour and something match with chemo, I believe, like in one of the.
I don't think it was that long.
It was like something
No,
ridiculous.
It was pretty long, but I don't think it was that long.
Okay.
I don't. Find out how long the Hoist chemo match was. I think it just seemed long because it was so crazy.
Because he was finishing everyone so
Yeah.
fast. And then he was the guys against chemo, and it was a little bit longer.
Tom Erickson had a match with Murillo Bustamante back in the day in one of the weird, you know, like offshoots, one of those little small companies that tried to make a big, like an MMA event. I think it was a no-glove event, too. It was back in those days. And I think that match went like an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, Murillo Bustamante was 185 pounds, and Tom Erickson was 300 pounds.
Yeah, he was a monster. I remember Tom Erickson.
There's a weird sound. Do you hear that? What is that, Jamie?
What?
That sound?
What's that?
You don't hear it?
No.
I hear like a feedback. You don't hear it?
You guys hear it?
You guys don't hear it?
No.
I'm okay.
Maybe it's just my headset. Hold on. Yeah. All right. I'll deal with it. But it's just, again, it's not fan friendly.
Yeah. I had my match with Keenan was an hour and 45 minutes, my first match.
Jesus.
That was my longest match, yeah.
Hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
How'd that end?
I heel hooked him. Yeah.
Is there another fight?
That's actually an amazing story we have to go over.
Yeah.
That's how me and Mo first met.
Yeah.
He hired Keenan to beat me up.
So it was only 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So it was really
Oh,
like
really?
one round in the UFC today.
Oh wow.
I feel like that was just, it felt like so much longer because Hoist was finishing everyone in like the first minute. He would just like hit a double leg and then strangle them when they turned around.
It was also so chaotic. And then, you know, it was so crazy because Chemo came in carrying a cross. Like, remember he had a cross on his back?
Yeah.
Like a giant wooden cross, like walked in with it.
Joe Son, right?
Yeah, Joe Son,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember, and that was one. I remember when Keith Hackney was just punching him in the balls. Like,
Yeah.
those original UFCs were really no rules.
They're
And-
pretty crazy, yeah. But, you know, that's really the birth of jiu-jitsu. I mean, that's where, for people in America, that's where they recognize, like, oh, my God, I don't know shit.
That's what got me into jiu-jitsu. When I was like 7, 8 years old, I was watching the UFC, and it just happened to be a Hoist Gracie tribute. And there was like all the reruns of the early UFCs. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking do that when I get older. And then like for the longest time, I like wouldn't train. I'll just like I'll hear Joe like breaking down how to do a Kimura. He's like, oh yeah, he needs to get his left hand here. And I like go with my buddy the next day. I'm like, fuck yeah, like shit works. I'm like fucking doing Kimuras with my fucking friends and shit.
It's really amazing how one martial art was. If you look at all the other martial arts, everybody wanted to be like Bruce Lee, the small guy who could beat everybody else. But in reality, the bigger people win. Like in any kind of fight involving striking and size and speed, it's just such a giant advantage.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is really the only thing where the smaller person actually can dominate a bigger person.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I was actually thinking about this recently. I don't know any other combat sport where you could have two elite level athletes and a 60, 70-pound weight advantage, and the smaller guy wins consistently.
Right, in absolutes.
I
Yeah.
mean, look at what's his name. We're doing the Hall of Fame for this ADCC, the inaugural one. So I had to look up the stats. The highest submission rate in ADCC is Marcelo Garcia,
Right.
89%.
That's pretty crazy.
And he was submitting Rico Rodriguez, guys 100
Right.
pounds heavier than him. And
Rico Rodriguez, who was a UFC heavyweight champion at one point, he heel hooked him. And remember, that was after he took Rico's back, and then Rico slammed him. Remember, he like threw all his body
Yeah, he
weight
got
back.
pissed, and then he's like, let me do a fucking heel hook.
Yeah.
But that was illegal because in ADCC you're allowed to slam only if you're in the threat of a submission. So Marcelo was on his back with a seatbelt grip.
Mm-hmm.
If he had switched to a rear naked, it would have been perfectly legal. But he just slammed him, flatlined him.
Yeah, it was also like, come on,
Yeah.
man. The guy's 160 pounds, you know? The difference in size was so preposterous. But yeah, in any other sport, you would never imagine that a small guy would be able to finish.
I talked to wrestlers and like, what do you mean you have open weight divisions?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, you have like a 66 kilo guy fighting like a 100 kilo guy. They're like, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense.
In wrestling, it doesn't make any
yeah,
sense.
I know.
Yeah, but in jiu-jitsu, it actually can kind of work.
Even our last ADCC in 2019, there's a guy from Australia, Lachlan Giles. He got bronze in the absolute, and he submitted a guy named Muhammad Ali. You got to see this guy. He was like 260, shredded. So he took out 3 of the biggest guys in 2019. So I think that was the first time since 2007 a guy in the 77 kilogram division, 170, medaled in the
Remember
absolute.
when Gunnar Nelson, when he beat, what's his face?
Jeff Monson?
Jeff Monson, yeah. That's crazy. Monson's a fucking fire hydrant, a giant fire hydrant. Zero neck, all tattoos.
It just took him
Like
out.
communist tattoos all over his body and shit. He's
best
over
was-
in Russia singing Russian songs.
The best was the one year he protested. He just got naked and started walking around.
Yes, I was there for that
Were
one.
you?
Yeah, that was 2003. Yeah, he
right.
took off all his fucking clothes when he lost it. Who did he lose to? He
Got
lost a
DQ'd,
decision to someone.
I remember that was the one I didn't see, but I just know he stripped down, grabbed his Speedo, and just like threw it to the crowd.
Yeah, he walked off naked. Yeah.
That's amazing. Imagine being like the security guard having to fucking tell Jeff Monson he's got to leave. Like just he's got his cock out and you're like, man, you can't be doing this here.
I mean, he literally looked like the Hulk back then.
He was 2-time champ. I think he was the first 2-division champion in ADCC, so he was a beast.
He was the first guy I ever saw do a north-south choke, and a lot of people thought that you can only do that if you're strong. Like that's like a goon move that he's just like squeezing his head.
Yeah, but no.
And then people realized. Then Marcelo started pulling it off, and people were like, oh, that's a real move.
That was the interesting about Marcelo for me is he would always reinvent himself every ADCC. So 2005, he's hitting everyone with his X-guard sweeps. So that's what everyone's expecting. 2007 comes, he's just finishing everyone with north-south chokes.
I saw his debut in 2003. I was there live
Oh,
in
that's
Sao
right.
Paulo.
I was-
Yeah, that was wild because I was there with Eddie when Eddie was competing, when Eddie beat Hoyler. And when he choked out Shaolin, everybody was like, holy fuck. And it was the way he did it, the speed in which he arm dragged and took his back, and in the scramble, secures the choke and then finishes it like as they're scrambling and just puts them to sleep.
You know what the crazy thing too is 2003, Marcelo got second in the trials. So he was a last-minute replacement.
Crazy.
And like no one really knew who he was. And then it's like Shaolin just got put to sleep. And then he even tapped out Mike Van Arsdale. in
He
the
was
absolute-
Fabio Gurgel's student, right? And
Correct.
he wasn't even like he did a lot more gi than he did no gi, right?
Yeah, that's what he was known for. And then he just ended up being, like for me personally, the 2 greatest champions in ADCC, number 1, I'd say Galvao, but there's some people believe it's Marcelo. So he was definitely a pioneer.
Well, Marcelo finished more people.
Yeah, it depends on what the criteria is.
Yeah.
Like Andre has more medals, but I think that the way Marcelo won was far more impressive.
Yes.
And he's got a lot more division wins. Like he's got a way better. He's got way more fights than Andre overall in ADCC. Like he did the division every year because he never won the absolute, whereas Andre just did the division and then the absolute. He lost his first two, and then he double golded, and then he's just been doing super fights since 2013. So he hasn't had that many fights compared to Marcelo.
Marcelo was built so weird too because he had these giant ass tree trunk legs and this like normal sized upper body.
Yeah.
Just so weird, you know.
One of the head judges trained with him for a week, and he came to Abu Dhabi, and he was telling me he's like the weirdest body type he's ever felt. He's like these tree trunk legs that could elevate him, and these really small hands. So he's like, once he takes your back, there's no way you could defend.
Training with Mikey is like the same way because his legs are shorter proportionally than his upper body. So like you try
Musumeci?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you like try to pass his guard and like feet, like little tiny feet, like slip into places they normally wouldn't be able to because his legs are so short. So I'm like fucking trying to pass his guard and his like feet are like coming inside my arms. I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do here.
He sat down outside, and I had to get a photo of it because it's so preposterous. I'm like, what are you doing? How do you sit like
where
that?
his knees come in and his feet go out, and then
Yeah.
he sits. He sleeps like that. He sleeps like that on plane rides. Like he'll just sit in the chair and then fall asleep apparently.
I don't even know how the fuck your body contorts to that shape. It has to be like his body developed while he was doing those positions.
It's because I think his legs are actually disproportionately short compared to his torso. Like I think like for the size of his upper body, I think his legs are actually like disproportionate. I
Right.
think they're shorter than they're supposed to be.
100%. You can see he's got this long torso and these.
He's so odd.
So good though.
So good. He's so good and so weird. All he does is eat pasta and pizza, and he only eats once a day.
Yeah.
He's a fucking genius too. When you talk to the
and then
guy.
drills the rest the
Yeah.
other 23 hours.
Yeah, he drills 12 hours a day
Yeah. I mean, the guy.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, that's where you get results. You get results in doing those incredibly uncomfortable things.
I think he's the third American to ever get a world title. I think first was BJ Penn, then Rafael Lovato, and then Musumeci. I think is like a 3-time gi champion now. So he's got definitely the most titles out of any American.
I love the fact that he's going no gi now too. He's doing a lot of no gi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who's number one? What they're doing in Austin was so exciting because to be able to go watch world-class jiu-jitsu right here in Austin.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It was so
Yeah.
fun. So fun to just go there and just be able to take that in.
Yeah, now the production value and everything is through the roof, and they're doing a good job.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Abu Dhabi this is an enormous event, right? And this is happening in Vegas.
Yes. So like the first major event I did for ADCC was 2019. For me personally, my target, I thought the best ADCC ever was 2005, the one in Long Beach. That was my target. It had 2,800 people there. You had a bunch of MMA guys. You had GSP, Diego Sanchez, Gilbert Melendez,
Yeah, I was there
Jake
for that.
Shields. Yeah,
John-Jacques Machado had that match against
Dean Lister.
Dean Lister. That's right.
Yeah, so I was like, I got to beat this one. This was the best one. So 2019 comes. We broke the record. We had 4,000. It was a big success. Then comes this one, and we started selling tickets on Black Friday. So at 10 a.m., I wake up at like 10:45, and I had like 6 missed calls from the Thomas and Mack, which is where the event's going to be. I'm like, oh shit, something went wrong. And I answer the phone. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, do you know how many tickets you've sold? I was like, no. He's like, you've sold 5,000 tickets in 45 minutes. So we sold more tickets in 45 minutes a year out than we had in 2019. And we sold every single premium ticket in the first day. We sold over 7,000 tickets.
That's incredible
Yeah, so I was
for
like-
jiu-jitsu.
I mean,
That's so wild.
we sold $1 million in ticket sales for a
That's
grappling event
incredible.
in one day. So
That's incredible.
yeah, so I miscalculated that one.
Well, now you know.
Yeah,
As
it's a
long
good
as you
problem
get
to
this
have.
guy involved.
Had to charge more.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, having Gordon around, it's been a big boost. You know, I get into arguments about it all the time. I'm like, listen, you can hate the guy. You know, anytime someone tells me they don't like Gordon, I'm like, okay, but there's definitely a benefit.
I had a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg about it. He's like, well, what do you think about his attitude? I go, why do you think he's so fucking popular? There's 2 reasons. 1, because he's the best. And then 2, because he talks so much shit.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think that's a smart move?
The best is I'm like so shadow banned on Instagram, He goes to follow me. He follows my backup account. He doesn't. He probably couldn't find my real account.
Zuckerberg?
Yeah. So Zuckerberg follows like my breakdown page, the other one, but he
he
doesn't
can't
fucking
follow
follow my
your
real
page.
page because he can't find it. I posted one day. I posted like he was following me, and I tagged him, and I'm like, dude, fucking whitelist me, you fuck. Like I'm so shadow banned that he couldn't find my real account.
It's so funny because I think he wants martial arts to be very respectful, and he trains in martial arts and he does MMA, and he really loves it. He loves the sport.
Does he?
Yeah, and he loves you. Like, he thinks you're like extremely skilled. He loves watching you compete. He's like, I just don't know. I'm like, that's what's fun. It's part of the fun. He's like Americanizing martial arts.
But it's good though because people see me on social media and they meet me in person, so their expectations are so low. They're like, there's no way he could be worse than that. So if I'm any better than I am on social media, they're like, oh man, he's a great guy.
That's funny. That's so true. You talk so much shit. But it's like, think about how many more eyeballs are on you to see these accomplishments. Because if you were just quietly running around submitting all the best black belts in the world,
Yeah, it wouldn't
would
be the same.
still be impressive, but there's no way it would get the kind of attention that it's getting. And part of the reason why it gets so much attention is because you're smart about social media. And talking a lot of shit on social media is very effective for getting people hyped up.
Yeah.
I mean, it does two things.
As long as you can actually back it up.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just a clown.
Right. Yeah.
And you see that a lot. I mean, it does two things when you talk shit, right? First of all, it energizes your fans. They get all ramped up. But the people that hate you, they want to see you lose. So at the end of the day, they're all tuning in.
Yeah.
The flip side to that, though, is it puts a tremendous amount of pressure, So, like, people are waiting for Gordon to lose to just, cheer. So that's the flip side to it.
Which is amazing because people in grappling lose all the time. Like, it's not, like, no one goes on, like, a 10-fight winning streak in grappling. A 10-match winning streak is, like, unheard of.
Yeah.
Like, maybe have, like, a good tournament and you double gold, but, like, to win, like, more than 15 matches in a row, that, like, rarely happens. I think like, Hodger's best winning streak, I think, was, like, 20 matches or something like that. So, like, people win some, they lose some. But I know that the day that I lose again, it's just going to be like the end of the world. Like, I haven't lost since 2018. I'm going to, like, lose by advantage and be like, see, was never that good all
How many
along.
matches have you won in a row now?
I think it's 57 since 2018.
People don't know how crazy that is. But again, like we were talking about Musa Mechi, you train 7 days a week.
Yeah.
That's unheard of too. Everybody wants to take days off. Everybody wants to relax. There's levels to everything. There's levels to your commitment, and it's also your association with Danaher, your amazing training partners, the lineage that you come from. But if you look at the success, it's just the formula's there. I mean, you could see why you're so successful. There's no luck. It's not like just the craziest genetics ever. It's none of those things. It's consistent hard work plus intelligence plus technique plus the great training partners. It's just...
I get that all the time. People ask me what makes Gordon so good. I'm like, he's not the most explosive guy. There's guys bigger, faster, and stronger. For me, he does train 7 days a week, and he's just got a gift where he can see a position or any technique in jiu-jitsu and break it down instantly. I've never seen someone who could just break it down to its most basic, parts and rearrange it.
Have you always had that kind of discipline?
No, a big thing that improved my work ethic a lot. I mean, I was always a hard worker, but when I saw Gary was training 7 days a week, and then I saw John, who, like, could barely walk, like, just teaching, like, a class at Henzo's, then he teaches, like, 8 privates throughout the day, and then teaches again. Like, he would just teach, like, 8 a.m. at Henzo's in the city, and then he would teach 9, 10, 11, 12 privates, and then he would teach afternoon class, and then he would teach, like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 p.m. privates 7 days a week. And then, like, would get up and, like, go to walk, and he, like, his hip, like, needs a hip replacement. He, like, can barely stand up. And I'm just like, man, if this guy can fucking do this, like, I got to step my game up. Like, this is ridiculous. And he's been doing the same thing for 30 years. And it's just like, okay, like, there's definitely something to this consistency that I should be taking notice of.
It's with everything. It's with music. It's with comedy. It's with writers. Like, the people that can, like, sit down and do the work day in, day out, they lap everybody else.
If we can just show up,
Yeah.
you're already ahead of, like, 90% of the people.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
most people are just inherently lazy.
Yeah.
So if you just are doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years And even if you don't have a training program, you're just showing up every day and just training hard, even like an idiot, you're still going to be ahead of most people because most people just don't even take training seriously. Like me and Mo talk about this all the time. Like, this is your fucking job. Like, most people just treat it like a hobby. Like, I know hobbyists who train more than most black belt world champions. Like, most black belt ADCC world champions train 3-4 times a week. Like, it's just like a hobby to them. And then they go out, but they're all so lazy that they're all on the same level. Like, they have 10 guys who train 3 times a week, so they all progress at relatively the same speed, so they can get away with it. But now, once there's more professionalism and there's more money, as more money comes into the sport, you'll see that change, and you'll see real professionals start to grow.
Well, I think with you, it's not just the training every day, but it's also the analyzing of positions and the doing the intellectual work.
Yeah, it's mostly John. He always talks about everyone's happy to come in and do the physical work. You know, come in, they train hard, they get a good sweat, they're sore, but the mental work is the hardest work, and nobody wants to do that. He's like, you tell someone to come in and fucking do, you know, you do 3 hard rounds, and you do 100 burpees. It's like, oh yeah, no problem. You tell them to fucking sit down and figure out why this arm bar's not working, why the mechanics aren't right, and that no one wants to fucking do that.
Right.
So that's the most important stuff is the mental work.
So does John just analyze? I know he analyzes tape like all day long. He analyzes video footage, but does he analyze it with you guys? Does he break it down to you afterwards?
We do tape studies like once every 2 weeks at my house, where we watch like specific. He has like specific things that he wants to work on for that week or whatever the case is, or goals he wants to accomplish during that tape study. So we watched. So we'll watch tape at my house, and then he'll say, okay, this is the theme for tonight. This is what we're going to look at. Like the last time we watched, like we call it scrimmage wrestling, where it's wrestling with submissions under ADCC rules. And you don't really see a lot of it in ADCC because of the fact that no one even really knows it exists. People just take wrestlers and they teach them wrestling, and then they go to ADCC and hope for the best. So the last tape study, we actually watched Diego Sanchez fighting Nick Diaz in the UFC, because there was a lot of up and down scrimmaging where Diego would hit a takedown, Nick would go for a submission, and then Diego would always end up on top. And John just builds this habit of, we call it hustle till you score, where you just don't stop moving until you get to a score. It just completely changed the way that, you know, we all think about the ADCC scoring criteria and how to play the game.
How does John maintain his motivation?
Dude, I wish I could tell you. He's just been doing the same thing for 30 years. He loves it. I mean, I wish I had like half the dedication and like interest in jiu-jitsu that John has. And I mean, I'm the most dedicated athlete, I would say, to jiu-jitsu, and it still just pales in comparison. Like, we're podcasting right now. John's like watching like a 1957 boxing match, or like the semifinals from like the 1960 like judo Olympics. Like, it's insane.
It's just most people, when they work really hard towards something, they get a personal reward for it. Like, I mean, he's recognized widely as one of the greatest jiu-jitsu trainers of all time.
No question.
But like, it's not like the guy gets a lot of like personal satisfaction. I mean, there's not like a lot of people like heaping praise on him. That's not his motivation, which is so interesting to be that dedicated. Like, you get a lot of praise. Like, you're the guy who when Felipe quit and then you fucking walk around with a big smile on your face, or when you write down on a piece of paper they're going to submit Wagner Rocha with a triangle and then you go and do it. Like, you're getting like that feeling out of your own personal satisfaction, your own personal accomplishment, achievement. He's not even getting that. He's getting it from other people's achievements. He's so dedicated.
He's really selfless. I mean, he doesn't ask. I mean, he literally doesn't ask us for anything. No money, no nothing. He just wants you to show up to training. And I think he gets a lot of satisfaction from building athletes and seeing them succeed with the stuff that he teaches. And I think that's where his happiness comes from, is just seeing, like, when I like win ADCC or I do something big, like you can tell he's like very, very happy. That's like one thing that genuinely makes him happy.
I remember with John, like when I used to train with him for about a year when they were in Puerto Rico, and you know, most instructors, they'll just come, like the standard is 30-minute warm-up, 3 techniques, and then you roll for 30 minutes. So me and John would actually hang out after class all the time. He'd just come over, we'd get some food. he'd always be watching tape, and then he'd always be making notes. He would make a program for a week. He'd always have a goal: 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, and he would just go and apply that every day in class. So, that's all he does is dedicate himself to his craft, and you see the results.
There's no one like him.
No.
No one else does that.
And he doesn't do anything else in life. Like, he has an apartment now, and I'm like, hey, do you go like furniture shopping? You like get like plates and dishes? He's like, I have to do that. I'm like, we've been living here for a year, dude. I had to go to fucking Bed Bath & Beyond last week to pick him up plates, bowls, dishes, utensils.
What does he eat? Takeout?
So he fasts, and then he just goes to Whole Foods at the end of the day and picks up Whole Foods, hits on chicks. And but he like doesn't have like I helped him move into his apartments. Like no one's ever been in like any of John's apartments. So I helped him move into the apartment. So he's got like some furniture, he's got like a bed and like a couch and stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna need to put some furniture in here. I'm like, yeah, that's never gonna happen. But then I asked him, I'm like, do you have like cups and bowls and stuff? He's like, no. So I had to like go and buy him like all this shit. He like moves in, he's like, Gordon, what do you think about Wi-Fi? I'm like, what do you mean what do I think about Wi-Fi? He goes, is it worth getting? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you want to like hook up your TV and watch like, Netflix or something? He goes, I despise TV. I'm not going to watch it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, like what if you want to have like your phone connected to the Wi-Fi so you can watch tape? He goes, I can just watch it with the 5G. It's free. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, what if you have a chick over on a date and she wants to watch something on Netflix? He goes, good point. How much does it cost? And I'm like, I don't know, like $80 a month. He's like, okay, I'll consider it. And I'm like, all right.
He's like a character in a movie.
Yeah,
he really
100%.
is. Like, I've never even heard of a person like him. If a person was like that, they would be pretending.
Yes.
They're pretending to be this stoic master who's just selfless and dedicated to the advancement of their students. But there's no real people like that.
No, that's him. That's just like, it's
And
insane.
they got, and what you guys have 7? I think there's 7 of their teammates are in this ADCC, so he's doing something right.
Yeah, clearly. Now, this ADCC, how will people be able to watch it?
It's exclusively on Flow Grappling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for this one.
And so, is it a pay-per-view thing on Flow Grappling?
Subscription. So if you already have
Right.
a Flow membership, you'll be able to watch it.
Okay.
They gave me a lot of support, to be honest. A lot of people like to bash Flow, but I've been following the sport for 22 years, so I remember what it was like before they were around. It's
Like couldn't even watch matches.
it's like a dude in a camcorder, and you get your DVD 6
Yeah.
months later. So, for example, this ADCC, they're bringing over 70 staff themselves just to produce this event. So they've been a big help for sure.
Well, the commentary was always great on Flow, and it was great on Who's Number One, but Howell's not there anymore, right? Is that what happened because of...
That is correct.
So there was like, for people who don't know, Leandro Lo, who's this beloved world champion jiu-jitsu guy, got murdered the day before Felipe Pena.
The day of.
The day of.
The night before, yeah, like in the middle of the
Yeah.
night.
So
Did you hear about that story? It's crazy. So he's in a nightclub the night before, and I knew Leandro too. He competed in ADCC. I hung out with him a few times. Very nice guy. So based on what I've read in pretty good sources, he's in a nightclub. Some guy comes and removes a bottle off his table. So he takes him down, mounts him, says, have you had enough? Guy says yes. He gets up. As he gets up, the guy shoots him in the head, kills him. This is where it gets interesting. The guy who shoots him and kills him is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's a military police officer. So they arrest the guy, and Brazil, they don't mess around over there. There was like 60, 70 people outside the police station, protesting and just waiting for this police officer to get out. So
what the fuck, man?
yeah, over nothing. Just shoots him dead in the club, right in the head. So over nothing. So
That's a guy who's probably killed a few too many people. If you're a little that casual about killing somebody, oh, he mounted me. Fuck that. It's just so crazy. Literally, Leandro could have broken every fucking bone in his body, and what would he have done? Nothing.
nothing. And he let him up.
Instead, he lets him up, and he shoots him and kills him. It's crazy.
Yeah, over nothing. It's ridiculous.
It's so sad. It was so sad. So anyway, Leandro was good friends with Felipe, so obviously it's very emotionally devastating for Felipe. But that's where it gets weird.
Yep.
Right. So why don't you fill us in on the rest of it?
So then I get a call, like, oh, hey, Leandro died. Felipe wants to cancel the match. So I'm like, all right, we can't cancel the match. They're like, well, he wants to change the rules to 30 minutes. And I'm like, no, like Felipe is notorious for always trying to change the rules last minute or do like weasel his way into something that wasn't agreed upon. So I'm like, no. I'm like, we either fight on as the agreed upon rule set or we just reschedule. Like we had the bet match, the contract, it was for a no time limit match.
We should also explain to people that you gave him 10-1 on the money.
Yeah.
So you put up $100,000 to his $10,000.
Correct.
You guys put it in escrow, which is a wild thing to do.
I was the escrow account.
Okay.
So
it's a wild thing to do.
Yes.
To
That's how the whole match came because he was competing against some guy who won like the Brazilian trials. And he like basically beat Felipe. It was like a terrible match for Felipe. Felipe won, but he didn't look great. So he's like, oh, do you want to do a no time limit match? He got called him out publicly. He's like, do you want to do a no time limit match? We can do a bet match if you want. I'm like, oh, you're doing bet matches, no time limit now. I'm like, I'll give you 4-1 odds. I'm like, you can pick the number. I'll put up 4-1. Like you put up 10,000, I'll put up 40. You put up 100, I'll put up 400. And he makes this big long post basically to say no. And I'm like, really, 4-1? No. I'm like, I'll give you 10-1. He's like, okay, fine, 10-1. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, you pick the number. He's like, 10,000. I'm like, 10,000. I'm like, that's the best fucking number you can come up with. I'm like, if someone gave me 10-1 odds, I'm putting up like at least $100,000. Like, fucking figure it out. He goes, I'll put up 10,000. I'm like, okay. So he wires Mo the 10,000. I wire Mo the 100,000. And then he's trying to change the rules. And I'm like, no, we have this like contract agreed on. So I'm like, we either fight as agreed or we reschedule the match. Like, if you can fight for 10 minutes, you can fight for an hour. It doesn't fucking make a difference. Like, if you're going to do the match, do the match. So then he's like, oh, no, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight. So then this is where it gets interesting because he's like, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight. And doors are about to open. So Flo, like, has a meeting with him, and they're like, hey, like, we'll give you some extra money. And he's like, okay, now I'll fight. And I'm like, okay, so you wanted to fight. You just fucking wanted more money. Like, So they had to pay him more money to get him to fight. And then he goes out, and you can always tell when Felipe's starting to lose it. His body language falls apart. He starts complaining to the ref. So the second he didn't want to sit back, we went out of bounds, and he didn't want to go back to bottom guard, which is the position that we finished in. And I'm like, yep, he's done. And then I started picking up the pace a little bit, and then we ended up standing back up, and then he just walks over to the judging table, and Howell was there, and he's like, are you done? Like, what's wrong? And Felipe apparently was just like looking around, not saying anything, like just like traumatized. So then like there's crowd starts booing him, and then he comes back to the mat, and I'm like, yep, he's toast. So then I started picking up the pace more, and then like 2 minutes later, he's like, okay. He's like, I was like passing his guard, about to pass his guard, and I just hear, okay, I'm gonna stop now, and I'm just like, what? And he's like, I'm gonna stop now. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, buddy. So I just got up, and he just fucking quit during the match. So then he had this whole post-fight interview where he's like saying I'm a terrible person and this and that. So now he's just getting back to his normal life. Like, things are just starting to settle down. And I just realized when Mo got here, I'm like, we have a second bet. He's like, would you give me the same odds for ADCC? I'm like, yes, absolutely. I'm like, 10-1. So we signed the second contract. So now Mo messaged him the other day, and he's like, hey, Felipe, you need to send me another $10,000 for if you guys meet at ADCC. And now he just fucking wakes up to this message like, oh, man, I have to send this fucking guy another $10,000. So now we have a second bet match where if we meet at ADCC, it's the same 10-1 odds.
So this is only if, because the brackets are random?
Well,
How are the brackets picked?
I do the brackets.
Oh, so you do it, you select.
Yeah, so I mean...
Well, you could conveniently select.
I asked him to put the top 4 seeds on my side, but he told me they couldn't do that.
Yeah, he always does crazy stuff. I mean, for example, Gordon's the first guy I've ever seen who's doing the super fight and asked to do the division as well. So he's doing both. He's going to do the division. The crazy thing is this, potentially, very high chance maybe, I mean, I think Felipe Pena is going to be the second seed. So if they do meet, it'll be in the finals. So the 2 super fight fighters in 2019 was Felipe Pena against Gordon. So there is a possibility where Gordon would face Felipe Pena, and then the next, an hour later, Andre Galvao. So it's just insane.
Someone will definitely kill themselves if I submit Pena and then submit Andre. Like, some hater somewhere is just going to just blow their brains out 100%.
Yeah. People, they've run out of shit to say. That's one thing for sure.
Now they're making the only thing they're making fun of now is my hairline. I have like a little widow's peak. My dad had like a bad widow's peak. They're like, man, his hairline's receding. I'm like, that's the best you guys got. I'm like, this is what we're gonna do now. You're just gonna make fun of my hairline.
Dude, I'd kill 50 kittens to have your hair. I mean, that's all they can make fun of. That's hilarious. There's a moment where like someone achieves this undeniable success, where even the haters have to just take a deep.
Well, it's almost like
breath.
arguing with liberals about Trump. Like they just refuse to acknowledge facts. Like there was hundreds of people after the last match, like Felipe 3-0, he won that match. Like they're just like he won the match, and I'm just like I'm like all right guys, like I can't even argue with this now.
Who said that?
There was a ton of them. I
saw the comments.
Yeah.
My issue with that whole thing, that whole Philippe Gordon match, was I was actually the one that informed Gordon because he likes to sleep late when he competes. So it was like 3:30 p.m. Nat tells me like what happened, if my match might get canceled. So I was like, shit, I gotta wake him up. So I wake him up and I sit down and I tell him the situation. And the reality is Gordon was 100% ready to postpone the match. So the narrative is that he was the one that was pushing it to happen, and that's really not the case. And I know that because I was the one that informed him.
So how does Howell fit into that?
So then they did this they had this show on YouTube where like they came out and Howell was like they were doing this interview with these three guys, not this podcast basically with three guys, and Howell like basically said that I was like offered to move the fight up to the beginning of the card, and that I said no, I refuse, and I would only fight in the agreed upon terms. I was not willing to change anything in the contract, and that I wasn't willing to reschedule. They didn't mention about paying him more money, and they like just left some things out where it just made me look like the bad guy, and I'm just like, this is just not what happened at all. Like if you guys are gonna like
but
talk about,
Howell's a good guy. That's what I don't understand. Like I've known Howell forever. I don't understand why would he do that. Was he misinformed?
Yeah.
So apparently he just got his information from fucking Felipe's Instagram. I'm like, I'm like, that's where you fucking got your. I'm like, we both made a public post, and I'm like, this is just. So like, I'm okay where if people call me out for being an asshole and I'm actually an asshole, I'm like, okay, fine. But like, if you're just gonna attack my character and just say something just didn't happen and blatantly lie about it, then I have a problem with it. I'm like, just like, no, guys, this is not what happened at all.
It really sucks because he's a very good commentator.
Yeah, he is.
It's very hard to find someone who's that good at jiu-jitsu, who understands positions and is also a very good broadcaster. And I think Howell fits that bill. He's very good.
He's very talented.
I love listening to his commentary. I was really bummed out when he got fired, but then when you told me the whole story behind it, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't want him to get fired. I'm like, guys, you just have to fix this. Like this is not what happened.
He should just apologize. He just apologize and say he was misinformed, and they should hire him again because he's the best at it. In terms of like a broadcaster who's like a really good professional broadcaster who's also very knowledgeable in jiu-jitsu, understands positions, understands the rule set, understands everything.
For example, Hywell signed up because we do ADCC rules seminars because the rules are very complex. Hywell took the course, and to be honest, very knowledgeable. So, he took it very serious. Me and Hywell bumped heads a few times, but I like him. We were supposed to do for ADCC 2022, we were supposed to do like a pre-match show together. So I was bummed, but I invited him. He's going to come to the event and watch. So
maybe they can iron it out.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, did he apologize?
No, he didn't.
Ooh.
He didn't. Flo apologized. Hal didn't apologize to me.
Oh, he should definitely apologize.
But I mean, he definitely fucked it up. I mean, I didn't want him to get fired, but he fucked that one up big time.
Yeah, but that sucks if you get bad information from someone's Instagram and you think, well, I know Felipe. Felipe's a good guy. He would never lie. And then you just go and say the thing.
You got to double check.
You should definitely double check.
Especially something that like...
But Felipe is like notorious for doing shit like this. Like he's like the hardest person ever to negotiate with or do anything with.
Isn't it weird, though, when someone's that good at something but also has kind of a shifty character?
Yeah, that's like most people in the sport, though.
Really?
Yeah. They fucking because everyone's fighting for the most part over such a small, minuscule amount of money, And there's so many people in the sport, and there's so little money that everyone's just willing to fucking backstab one another for fucking $10.
But wouldn't you think, though, that at this point, when they've seen how much money you make, because you make so much more money than anybody else when it comes to like selling instructionals and just
it's like a Connor to the rest of the guys.
It's so different that wouldn't you say, hey, like, what is he doing different?
You would think, right?
I should fucking do that.
Dude, I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
But I think they're just so blinded by hate that they just are just like, fuck that guy, and they just refuse to like even acknowledge anything. But yeah, I mean, it makes my job easier. It's great for me because I'm the only guy doing it. I mean, not everybody. I mean, no one can do what I do. Like, no one's gonna go on a 60-match winning streak and be able to call submissions and stuff like that. But there are other ways to build a brand, and these guys are just so bad at it. Like,
but conceivably, someone could do what you've done if they did what you've done.
Yeah.
Like, conceivably, it's possible. You know? I mean, it's not...
Yeah, if I do it, people could do it.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, they just don't.
Isn't that interesting when one person just separates himself from the herd and nobody goes, hey, I need to do what that guy's doing. And then that becomes like the norm. You must train 7 days a week. You must study tape. You must analyze it from an intellectual perspective and not just be a brute.
It's so crazy. Actually, like, we're just releasing it now, like, for ADCC. I just wrote a book on this about like building brands and like how to be successful as like a young person or a young athlete, and it goes into like a lot of that stuff. But it's just crazy how none of these guys can like differentiate themselves. Like, okay, if you can't win, at least like be different. Like, do something different where it's like you get someone's attention. Like,
but you are different. The thing is, people trying to be different, then you get Dylan Dennis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get people who just trying a little too hard.
Yeah.
Obviously he has talent, but there's something about that extra, the trying too hard, that people are like,
Yeah, it gets like played out.
It doesn't work.
And then when you don't
not the
win or you
same.
don't compete, then it's just like, then it just kind of spirals out of control.
Exactly. Then it's like he's just making
talking.
a lot of noise.
I mean, my thing with Gordon, too, is he doesn't play it safe. A lot of guys, when they reach the top, that's when they stop taking matches as much, and they just want to protect, their position. He's clearly not doing that. I mean, he's going into his division. This has 5 ADCC champions in it. It's never happened before. So he's one of them. So he's got Felipe Pena, Vinny Magalhães is in there, Orlando Sanchez, Cyborg, and all these killers. And he's like, hey, can you put 2, 3, and 4 on my side of the bracket? I'm like, it doesn't work like that. And I was like, I can't.
Well, because I'm already going to be there for the weekend. Like, it's just more free money to do the division. I'm like, I may as well just fucking do the division and get more money.
Yeah, it makes sense. Have you read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell?
I haven't.
It's a really good book.
Yeah.
And it's you. It really it pertains to you and your success. It's about the Beatles. It's about all these different outliers in sports and art and what they've done that separate them from everybody else. Like with the Beatles, they got this job in Hamburg where they were playing 7 nights a week. They were playing 5-6 hours a night. They were playing every night. So they left Liverpool. They go to Hamburg. They're playing, and they do this for like a couple of years, and they come back, and they are a completely different band. They're so much better. They're so smooth and in sync. And then when they came to America, when they broke out worldwide, that was where it all came from. It all came from insane amounts of hard work.
Yeah.
And insane amounts of numbers and reps.
Did you see, I'm sure you watched The Last Dance?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that.
That was really good, too.
I've heard it's really good.
You can see why Jordan was different than the rest of the guys. Yeah.
It's that same thing. It's just like being willing to put in way more work than everybody else, way more thought into it, way more focus. And that's where results are achieved.
100%. Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, too, like, they're all just focused on like being athletes. So like they'll teach seminars just to survive, and then they'll just train and do the bare minimum. But like, it's like you're commentating UFC. You don't just do that. Like, you have a podcast, you have this, you have that. Like, you got to be doing other shit besides just training. Like, you have to like get your fucking brand in order. You got to organize your life. You got to do all this shit that people don't want to do. And athletes are so tunnel vision. I just want to compete. I just want to do this. I just want to train. You got to branch out and do other shit too.
Comics are similar, the same way. Like I when we started doing podcasts in 2009, I told all these comedians, I'm like, do it multiple times a week. And like, I don't want to. And I'm like, dude, you want to get people addicted. I go do it 3-4 times a week. And even the guys I was doing it with were like, why are you fucking doing this so much? And I was like, listen to me. You got to do it more. The more you put out there, the better you're going to get at it, and then the more people are going to listen to it. And they're like, yeah, but I got to do stand-up and this, that. I go, bitch, I do stand-up too. The fuck are we talking about? You go out on stage at night. Well, I got to write. Well, I fucking write too. I write at night. Like, there's time to do all these things.
But like like most of those people, I mean, some people can change, but like most of those people, like the second they start making those excuses,
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, like he's done. Like
Yeah.
he's never gonna make it. But like, I just like give up.
Yeah.
But like every now and then you get like a guy who, like, you give him advice and you're like, okay, I'll do that, and then they just immediately, like, it's just so easy. Just look at the guys who are successful and just use that as the guideline.
The thing about it is, with stand-up, there is an argument that impulsive, lazy people also can be great stand-ups because they just do it enough, or they're going on stage enough, and they have these ideas, and then they know how to push the idea to the public. They know how to, like, set the joke up right, and they do it in front of so many different crowds that they polish it up to the point where it's this fucking hilarious bit. Like, I've seen guys that are lazy as fuck, and they're great comics. And you just got to go, okay, you could be better.
Yeah.
You could be even better than you are. Believe it or not. And you tell them that, they're like, but they don't want to hear it.
That's the problem with jiu-jitsu, though. Like Gordon said, a lot of them don't treat it as their career. It's just like
Right.
a hobby. And I tell these guys, it's like any professional sports. You have a very limited window of your career. Eventually, you're going to have to retire, and they don't think like that.
Do you think it's also because the financial compensation is not at the level of, like, the NBA or something like that, where you, like, if you're going to play in the NBA, you're playing against these guys that are they're fucking grinding. They're trying to get there. These guys are practicing every day. They're focused and driven, and those are the guys that ultimately succeed.
That's part of it too. Another thing that no one talks about, to my success, is that I have the financial freedom to just focus only on training. Like, most guys will win ADCC, and then to support themselves for that year, they'll do like a seminar tour, where for 3 months or 4 months out of the year, they're teaching seminars and they're making active income, where you got to travel here, you got to travel there, and that fucks up your training. And the only reason why people wanted you in the first place for the seminar is because you're talented and you're winning competitions. So then you just take time away from training, you start losing more, and then the demand for seminars goes down and it kind of spirals out of control. Whereas I set myself up with the passive income and the instructionals and everything else, so I don't have to do the seminars if I don't want to. I just spend all of my time training. So my training, I have the ability to train way more than these guys because I set myself up in a much better financial position through the passive income. And no one talks about that. People spend half the year teaching seminars, and they're like, "Oh man, like I missed 6 months of training," and then they lose competitions, and then it just goes down from there.
Is it possible to do both? Is it possible to travel and still get that training in, or is it you really have to be, like, in a specific set and setting?
I mean, you have bodies, right? But like, for me, going to Ohio to teach a seminar is not going to be the same as training with John for the weekend.
Right.
Like, traveling itself just gets old, and like you're flying all around, you not eating properly, like you're eating airport food and shit.
Yeah.
So, and then you're like miss lifting a lot of times. A lot of times guys travel and they teach a seminar, then they'll sit on the beach, and it's just, without a routine, it's tough. Like, it's just much better to stay in a routine, so you have, like, okay, I'm doing this today, and this tomorrow. And the traveling gets old, and I mean, you have bodies, but it's not the same as having like a coach with a training program. Like, you just show up at a random gym to teach a seminar, and now you have 50 people who you have no idea who they are. They're probably going to try to injure you or go super hard. Like,
Right.
oh, like, now's my chance to fucking show Gordon how good I am. It's like, no, dude, I just taught a seminar. I'm not trying to fucking have you jump into my knee and break my leg.
Right. That does happen.
But there's a lot of athletes out there who could go on seminar tours, and those are pretty lucrative. I mean, they can make, what, $2,000 to $4,000 per seminar. Like Craig Jones.
It's a great income, but it's active income. Like, you have to be there. Like, there's only so many seminars you can teach. There's only one you. There's only so many seminars you can teach in a year, and every seminar you teach is going to inherently detract from your time training.
Whereas your model is put out these DVDs and these videos.
Exactly.
And
So
these instructional.
I spend a weekend in Boston filming an instructional, and over the course of a year, it'll make me $1 million. And it's just one weekend of work and then everyone in the world can access it. It's not like I have to be there to teach a seminar for 200 people. I just upload it, and then someone in Europe can buy the instructional and watch it right at home.
And that's at BJJ Fanatics.
Yeah.
So in doing that, you must see those techniques and all the training that you've done. You must see it in other competitors as well. Do you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of the top-level guys behind closed doors, they'll never admit it, but they tell me, like, yeah, I just watch all your instructionals, and that's how I mean, and you can see it. In like my generation and the older generation, you don't see it as much because guys have already fell into their games and they don't want to change, which is why they're getting left behind and the new generation's beating them. But in the younger generation, like at ADCC trials, you see a lot of our stuff. You see like the back tack system, you see body locks, you see leg locks, you see all the stuff that we're doing in the instructionals.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see that systematic, like very technical approach spreading. You know, like you do see these very, very clear pathways that you guys choose, and then you see other people adopt those pathways too, and you see them follow the same things that John is teaching you guys. You see other people adopting that.
So for like ADCC, we have 8 qualifiers. So if you win the qualifier, you get to go to the World Championship. So we have North America, South America, Brazil, Europe, and Asia. The interesting thing to me is the North American trials have skyrocketed past the other regions, past Brazil, past Asia, and past Europe. And this was the first time I did the Brazil trials. Very tough, it's a fighting culture, but they're lacking the wrestling and the leg lock. And if they don't adapt quickly, that gap between the North American athletes and everyone else is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's pretty crazy that Brazil, they rejected leg locks for so long that some of the really, really high-level black belts, like if you tap them with a leg lock, the crowd would throw shoes at you and boo at you.
It used to be viewed as a dirty technique, to be honest.
Which is so weird.
Well, the thing is, it all comes down to technology. The people who have the most technology are going to ultimately win over X amount of years. So a big problem for Brazil is the best technology that they have access to, or that we have access to, is the instructional videos. Like if you can be anywhere in the world and buy a John Danaher video or a Gordon Ryan video, and you can watch that, that in my opinion is the best technology that you have. The problem with Brazil is my instructionals are $250. That's 1,000 reais, and I have 20 of them. So you're really going to get someone in Brazil that's going to spend 20,000 reais, $20,000 for us on my instructionals. They don't have, a lot of people in Brazil don't have the financials to be able to purchase the technology. So that's going to make it harder for them to stay at the level that America, Europe, that we're operating at, because they just don't have access. A lot of them don't have access to the technology. Many of them do, but many of them don't. So it's going to be interesting in the next 10 years. It's like if you took 2 islands and you put nerds on one and you put jocks on the other, and you have them fight in the first 4 months, the nerds are going to get beat up. But then 2 years from now they have fucking spears. Now they have guns 5 years later, and then the meatheads are still just trying to throw rocks at the nerds.
Right.
So ultimately, technology is gonna prevail. So I think the big problem that Brazil is running into, and will run into, is they don't have as much readily accessible technology as America, for example. So I think in the next decade or so, it's going to be a competition between America and Europe, Russia. When it starts getting money pushed into the sport and it gets bigger, you get a guy who's been wrestling all his life, who fucking grew up in the fucking middle of nowhere, Russia, who starts taking up jiu-jitsu at an early age, and he's wrestling. Like, that's going to be a problem.
What are the best schools, best gyms in terms of technique that come out of Brazil? Are there some outliers that are more technical?
I think Mika. There's a new kid from Brazil. For me, I think he's going to be the second biggest superstar after Gordon. He's like 18 years old. His dad is producing some serious killers. A lot of people think
Mika Galvão.
Mika Galvão.
Yeah, he's a beast.
He's a beast. I trained with him. My mind was blown. Very, very talented.
So young too.
Yeah, he's good in the gi. He's good no gi. Speaks perfect English. And Brazil is a little weird. It's very rare where all of Brazil will come and support an athlete, and they're all behind Mika. So his dad is producing. They got 2 other athletes in there as well in the 66 division, and these guys are killers. They were just smoking everyone at the trials. So
And do they have that same sort of a systematic technical approach?
From what I think Mika's dad's his coach, and he was like a police officer, so he trains like military style. So whatever he's doing, I mean, it's working.
Another big problem too is all the Brazilians who are super successful all moved to America. So most of the Brazilian champions live in America now. And then you have some good champions that live in Brazil, like Felipe lives in Brazil, but a majority of the champions moved here to either train or open up schools. So it'll be interesting. Brazil has a few guys that are good champions that they're producing now. Like Mika's a very young kid, but there's over the last 5 years, there's a lot less champions coming out of Brazil.
That's really interesting. So they just come over here and then they start schools and make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is harder to do over there.
I mean, the other problem too is this: if you want to learn leg locks, who do you go to? Okay, you got John Danaher. There's some 10th Planet guys who are very good. Lachlan Giles. There's not that many experts in leg locks, so that's a big issue. And other than buying DVDs, I don't know how you close that gap. Because it's, for me, I hate leg locks personally. It's like a whole nother martial art. It's obviously very effective, but they have to learn that part of the game. And I went to Brazil. This was the first time I did the Brazil qualifiers myself. I went there for one reason. The other ones, they were okay, but I went there to get that passion into no-gi. And, I was there for 2 weeks, and we smashed it. A lot of competitors, so I'm interested to see what happens in 2024 in the next Brazilian trials to see, because I've seen the progression in the North American trials massively over the last 4 years. So I want to see if that happens in Brazil, because at the end of the day, they still own 85-90% of all ADCC titles.
It is pretty wild when you think about it that way, right? But obviously that's the birth of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Fucking Brazil, clearly.
Yeah, exactly.
Over the next 5 years, there'll definitely be more Brazilian, maybe even 10 years, more Brazilian champions than any other country per ADCC. But the next decade, I think, you'll start to see a shift where it's more Americans, more Europeans.
And are there good guys coming out of Russia like you were talking about? Has that happened yet?
Not yet, because most of them just are too busy wrestling or they go right to MMA.
Yeah.
But I think and a lot of the Sambo guys kind of clash and think jiu-jitsu is like soft or whatever the case is. But I think as the sport grows in popularity, and especially when there's more money pushed into it, I think you're going to have people who are dedicated from a young age, who are very good at wrestling, like near Olympic level in wrestling, but not good enough to make the Olympics, so they do jiu-jitsu instead. And they have like Olympic level wrestling with high level intricate jiu-jitsu, and that's going to be an issue, because the main hole, one of the big, the two major holes of the last decade in jiu-jitsu has been leg locks, which is now the gap starting to be filled there, and the integration of standing and ground techniques. The standing position in jiu-jitsu is terrible. The wrestling for jiu-jitsu rule sets is mostly terrible. But when you have Olympic caliber wrestlers who have been trained jiu-jitsu since they're 5 years old, you're going to have a real issue.
Yeah. So what needs to be done to get more eyes on it? Because right now, to me, it seems like, I know you guys sold thousands of tickets, but those are probably thousands of jiu-jitsu students.
Well, I'll be
We got to
honest.
do more Rogan shows.
That'll help a little.
I'll be honest with you. So 2019, me and my team, realistically, we worked on it for 4 months. We didn't really give it our 100%. But the best feedback I had at 2019 was a middle-aged woman comes up to me, and she's like, I just came here because my son asked me to come, and I had a great time. So my whole thing is I need to cater to the masses. If I only cater to jiu-jitsu fans, I'm not going to grow. So how do I do that? For this one, one of the biggest influences for me was Pride FC. So we're going very heavy on the production. And I bring up this analogy all the time. How many UFC fans actually train a combat sport? It's probably less than 1%. NFL is what? 1% of one, no one trains it. So I need to get the masses and not just cater to jiu-jitsu fans. So that's what my goal is with this event.
The problem is that watching jiu-jitsu is not that exciting until someone submits somebody. Whereas watching MMA, everybody understands what's going on. That guy kicked that guy. That guy punched that guy. Oh my God, he's got his neck.
That's the big thing, is it starts at the athletes, and most athletes are boring. Like when I go out, I have like the kind of like Anderson Silva effect, where like you go out and you're like, this dude is just going to make his opponent look like he's never trained before. So like that's why people watch me. If you look at what I do, most people are interested in matches because of movement. Like that's why Gary's so exciting, because you know you're going to watch Gary Tonin, you know it's going to be a fucking sick match because he's going to be just scrambling all over the mat the whole time looking for submissions. My matches actually don't have that much movement, but when I get a hold of people, it's just like when I get them into certain positions and they just can't escape, they can't move, they can't do anything. That's what's interesting. So most people enjoy movement, but when they watch my matches, it's interesting because of the fact that I just make guys look like they don't know what they're doing. But most guys are boring. Like you see Andre go out and he just pushes the guy around for 20 minutes and then hits a shitty double leg and scores 2. And it's like, yeah, everyone knew that was going to happen, number one. Number 2, no one wanted to watch that. So it really starts in the training room. An athlete's always going to train or always going to compete like he trains. If you train to fucking submit guys, no matter what the rule set is, you're going to go out and you're going to try to submit guys.
Yeah, there's matches like that one who's number 1 match between Wagner
And Hinger.
Yeah, and Hinger. It's like,
Yeah.
They just pushed each other around
Yeah.
for 15 whole minutes.
No, and there was no wrestling exchanges. There
No.
was no jiu-jitsu at all.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah. So like you get a match like that, and you're like, oh man, we're gonna watch this. Who's number 1 today? Let me show my friend who's never trained. And they see that and like, what the fuck was that, man?
The best part about that match was Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo heckling.
Oh, yeah. He was saying some. I think he was yelling like Imanari.
Oh, we were hammered. Yeah, he was yelling out some wild
But
shit.
I think the problem with jiu-jitsu too is for the last 20 years, it's been ingrained to the athletes. It doesn't matter how you win. You can win by an advantage. You see in the gi championship, they win by an advantage and they'll rip open their gi like they won the lottery. And I keep telling these athletes, the days of just winning is not enough. It's how you win. You got to go out and market yourself. And I think that's the hard part. And as that transitioning from amateur to going a little bit more mainstream, you have to be exciting. You have to market yourself.
Well, some of the young up-and-coming guys that are very excited, like the Ruotolo brothers, like what is the secret to their success? These guys are 19 years old.
I was just thinking about this. So the best up-and-comers I've seen are the Rotolos, Mika Galvao, and there's this American kid, Kolabate.
Yes.
Who he won at 16 years old. He won our trials, took everyone out. And the one thing I've noticed, the common denominator for all of them is extremely supportive parents. So Cole's dad's there, Mika's dad, and the Rotolo's mom and father really support them. And they've been competing since they've basically been born.
Those kids are very impressive, the Rotolo brothers.
I agree with that. On a technical level, in order to differentiate yourself and be a champion, you need to be good at everything, good everywhere, and have 1 to 2 things you can do better than everybody else. So the Rotolos are good at everything. They have a unique ability to manage pacing better than anybody, better than almost anybody. So that's one thing. They have a very unique ability to hit dark strangles from anywhere. They are dark strangle masters, more or less. They have very good darces, and they can finish people with them from any position, top, bottom, doesn't matter. And they have an incredible ability to put side-to-side flanking passing pressure, where they're never engaged inside the guard. Every time you see them approach a guard, they always touch the legs and they walk to an angle. They walk to north-south. So the whole time you're in a full crunch trying to pull your knees into your chest, and they have really long arms. So they have hands on your legs, and you're trying to make contact with your legs. You can't make contact. So they have incredible ability to put massive amounts of passing pressure on you. If you try to stand up or overextend yourself from bottom position and get up, your hand comes out, and then you get strangled with the darce, which they're exceptionally good at. And then when they see you starting to break from the passing pressure, then they pick the pace up. So they have 3 things which they do better than almost anybody else, and that's why they're so successful. Everyone has holes in their games, and if you exploit those holes, you can beat them. You've seen Craig exploited some of their holes in their game, and Craig managed to beat them. But they do everything well, and they have 3 things which they do better than almost anybody else. So on a technical level, that's why they're so impressive, is because they have something that differentiates them, and they're very dangerous. So you have to respect them from every position.
Which brother tapped Gary?
Ty
Rotolo.
Were you surprised by that?
I was very surprised because we did a whole camp based around dark strangles, and Gary tried to put a hand in. First of all, Gary, he turned towards him and actually gave Ty the arm. All he had to do was put his back on the floor. So I'm watching it. I'm like, what's happening right now? And then he turned towards him and Ty locked Darce, and I was like, ooh, that looks tight. And then before he can get any of his escapes going, like the cage was in the way, and then it just got too tight and he had a tap. And I was like, wow, like that was not what I expected at all.
Gary puts himself in danger.
Yes.
Like, he is a risk-taking motherfucker. That dude just flies at you.
When I watch Gary matches, I'm 100 times more nervous watching Gary matches than I am competing myself. I watch it and I'm like, oh, why did he just let himself get flattened out in half guard? I'm like, why did he just let his back get taken? I'm like, just go out there and fucking like try to kill these people. Like, don't just mess around. The one time the two best performances Gary's had was the 155 EBI, where he went out guns blazing and just submitted everybody easily, and then his match against Paul Harris, I think, where he went out because he like really respected Paul Harris, and he was like, I don't want to get my leg broken. So
also, Paul Harris at the time was on all the steroids.
Yeah, he was like
he
literally
was so big.
He's the most feared athlete I've ever seen in ADCC. I'll never forget one of his opponents in 2011 goes up to him before they're about to face each other. Hey man, if you catch my leg, please don't break it. And there was, I'm not going to name names, there was famous athletes who were just terrified of this guy.
Because he hangs on.
Yeah, I mean,
he doesn't let go when you tap.
Did you ever see that video with him and David Avillan?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. That was so dumb because they should have never allowed them to restart with a locked heel hook where you
That's
can
the
go
rules,
ready,
though.
set, go.
Those are in the rules. If you
That's
go out
so
of
dumb.
bounds-
That's so dumb because in scrambles, everyone knows this. When you're in the middle of a scramble, like, you're still moving. Like, if someone's trying to secure it, you're still defending. But if you let a guy say ready, set, go, and all he has to do is just crank on it.
I agree 100,000%. One of the most controversial, oh man.
Yeah, this is it. This is the match. So they let him start from here.
It's a bad break in the heel knee bar. See, he gets broke.
Yeah.
See the knee hyperextend.
Yeah. Oh my God. How bad was his knee after this?
Look, I mean that looks bad. I don't know if he got surgery or anything, but you can go if you go slow mo, you can see right there. Yeah, that's a bad break.
Did he break the knee, or is that like a shin bone break? That looks
You
terrible.
get ACL, you get hamstring. I mean, it's so it's a heel knee bar. So he has a heel hook grip, which means that David can't turn back into the knee bar. Because usually, if you have a knee bar with only one leg extended, the guy can high leg and twist and turn. But if you turn back into it, the normal way to escape, you get broken with the heel hook because he has a heel hook grip.
That seems so insane that they would allow this. So insane to
I think
start
for
from that
this-
position.
Oh God.
So insane.
So I think for this match, this was
At least
in
you let go.
Nottingham. I think the controversy was he tapped and said he didn't, and that's why they put him
Paul
back.
Harris did?
No.
Oh,
Avalon said he didn't tap.
Really?
And there was some confusion. If my memory.
Oh, let's
serves
see
me right.
that. Let me see that. I want to see if he tapped. Where?
See, that's when they say.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
tap.
See his leg.
See, he's.
Oh, that seems like he tapped.
Yeah, watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So-
They should have looked at that tape and said that's a wrap.
But that's one
Smacks
of the
him.
most controversial things we do in ADCCs. We'll let you out of the bounds, just specifically for that.
Look, Paul Harris is trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to do a hug. Trying to do a hug. Oh, we want to do it again? Okay, but let's have a fully locked in heel hook.
I would have been like, it's over.
Fuck that, man. The fake tap is one of the saddest things.
Remember,
It's so
Bustamante?
sad. Yeah, he tapped out
Lindland.
Matt Lindland twice. Yeah.
I had to fight that fucking guy a week after ADCC. I had like my broken hand still. I was like all beat up from ADCC, and like the weekend after, I had to go out and fight him.
He was huge.
Paul Harris.
Yeah, he's a giant dude. He's so
He shows
jacked.
up in a tank top. He's like 230. I'm like, oh my god.
He's extremely flexible too. It's weird. He
He can do full splits.
He can rotate his entire torso very easily.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
That's interesting for a guy that's that built.
yeah, he was.
Yeah,
a
he can do like full
behemoth.
splits and stuff.
Yeah, he was one of the scariest guys in MMA. And then, a few guys figured out his game.
Belcher, right?
Yeah, Alan Belcher. Alan Belcher trained, I believe he took Lister down to camp with him, and they just went over every single aspect of leg lock defense, and that's all they drilled. They just drilled that constantly. And so he actually entered into like leg lock positions, entered into Ashi positions, and then beat him up.
Countered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Belcher's a bad motherfucker, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Belcher's fighting, he's a boxer now. and he's a heavyweight.
Is he?
Yeah,
I didn't know
he's fucking huge. Go find out Alan Belcher boxing. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
hey, he's boxing people now. Look at the size of him.
Oh my God.
That's him?
Hello, USADA.
That's incredible.
Dude, he's a tank.
Yeah, he fought 185 in the UFC, but obviously cutting weight to make 185.
Yeah.
But now he's a super jacked heavyweight. See if you can find a video of him. He actually looks very good. Well, he's a smart guy. Alan's a very smart guy, and he's a very disciplined guy. So, like, oh, it's bare knuckle
Bare
boxing.
knuckle. Wow.
Oh, Jesus. That's even grosser.
Everyone comes into these fights like all guys who like, used to fight MMA. They're all like 3 times the size. I love it.
Yeah, it is. The bare knuckle thing is weird how that's become so popular. But, like, no one has bare knuckle MMA.
Yeah.
It's weird because you really should. I mean, if you can shin someone in the face, like, why can't you punch him with a bare knuckle? If you can elbow someone in the face, why
Yeah.
can't you punch him with a bare knuckle?
That was always interesting thing to me about Japan. They didn't allow elbows, but soccer kicks to the head, no problem.
And stomps. Yeah, soccer
Vanderlei?
kicks, stomps. It's just
Dude, soccer kicks are brutal.
you really have an unrealistic idea of what your hands are capable of, though, if they're wrapped and gloved, because your hands are very delicate instruments. I mean, some people's more than others, obviously, but no matter what you do with your hands, these fucking bones are not meant
They
to
must
be
like
hitting
break their
people.
hands every fight.
all the time.
Fedor used to break his hand almost every fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's so common. It's common in MMA. It's common in boxing, just in regular boxing. And in the last fight, just this past weekend, Cyril Gahn broke his hand on Tai Tuivasa's head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but this the thing about bare knuckles, I don't understand what they're doing with those wraps, because they don't really have bare knuckles. I mean, the knuckles are bare, but the hand is somehow or another supported, which I think you should be fucking bare knuckle. It's like you have bare elbows, you have bare knees, you have bare feet.
Yeah.
Does it protect
Maybe
their
for
hands?
wrists.
It must do something.
Wrist support,
Yeah,
maybe?
wrist support for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, like if your fist is shaped like that, if you hit anything on the edge,
Yeah.
it's gonna jack your wrist up. It'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
These 2 bones are the only bones that are really supported. These break all the time. The little ones by your pinky and the ring finger.
Do you think it's the way they throw punches? Because I remember Fedor used to throw these huge looping punches.
Right, those
You know.
casting punches. Yeah,
Yeah.
he throws punches like this too. Like
Yeah.
he'll throw these kind of
Yeah.
weird punches. There's something to that, but it's chaos. When you throwing punches, you try to hit him with these knuckles, but you hit him with these 2,
Yeah.
and then your hand
Yeah.
shatters, and then you have this swollen fucking mass
And you
inside
have like
your
2
leather
more rounds
glove.
to fight with a broken
Yeah,
hand.
and guys do it all the time. But it's just weird to me. Like Uriah Faber when he fought
broke
Mike
both his
Brown.
hands.
Yeah, he fought both
broke
both
both
his hands.
hands?
He was,
He's
like,
throwing
throwing
elbows.
elbows.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's the only aspect of MMA where the part of your weapon is protected. And it's really kind of the weakest weapon. A punch is, I mean, it's very powerful, obviously, but it's very weak in comparison to a kick
Or an elbow. Yeah.
or an elbow. Yeah, I mean, an elbow, you feel nothing. You could
Yeah.
do that on a table and it doesn't bother you at all.
Yeah.
If you did that with your hand, that would really fucking hurt.
Yeah.
But you see these guys, fighting in bare knuckle boxing, and you're like, that's really interesting how that's kind of taking off.
It's getting bigger, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these.
They're
that's-
smart marketing. They're doing a great job. They get a lot of hot chicks over there. And
Yeah.
you see that last girl? She flashed the crowd.
Yeah, I saw
What's her
that.
name? Ty something or another?
I saw
That's
that
amazing.
yesterday.
Yeah, she showed everybody her tits after she knocked some girl out. Nice combination, too. She hit this girl with a clean uppercut and a smooth left hook. And then she's like, and here's my tits, too.
Sign up to my
That'll get
OnlyFans.
views.
Yeah, I
Should
mean,
give her
why
a
not?
bonus for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, it was on all over these websites. For a first, bare knuckle boxer flashes the crowd. Smart marketing move, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just I think it should be bare knuckle. I also think there should be no cage. I really think they should be fighting on like an open field. I'm like, if you have a field for football, why don't you have a field for MMA? Just have them stand in the center and just fight. Like, because it's too easy to get up if you have a cage.
Yeah.
Someone presses you up against the cage, you can wall walk, you get back up to your
Yeah.
feet.
The
Here
cage
she is.
changes it completely.
Whee! Oh, Jesus, that's the full one. Some good-sized cans, too. Congratulations, lady. It was a nice combination, too, though. Watch the combination. Boom! And look at this clean left hook. Smack.
Dang.
Very nice. So she's hot and she gets crap.
That was bare knuckle as well.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, they got Paige Van Zant went
I
over
saw
there. Rachel Ostovich. So they got these hot girls fighting each other.
Is that in the
kinda funny.
U.S.?
Yeah, they can fight in like Wyoming.
Okay, I was gonna say, how did they
Yeah.
get sanctioned?
Yeah, I think they can only fight in Wyoming. It's like fucking cowboys show up with dip in their mouth and
I mean, the original.
fresh bear
All the rich
scratches.
cowboys.
Yeah, Wyoming's a wild ass place. It's such a small population, and it's like super duper rich people in like Jackson Hole, and then ranchers.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Every 100 miles.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the only place where they do it, or maybe
That fight was
Oklahoma.
in Bangkok.
Oh, in Thailand, the one you just saw. Yeah, that one was. So they're doing it in outside the United States as well, but they're signing a bunch of former MMA fighters that just sometimes their knees are gone and they
think
can't
Hector
kick
Lombard
anymore.
was doing it
Yeah,
as well.
Hector's doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see.
Mike Perry just beat Michael Venom Page,
Yeah.
I was
which is pretty
surprising.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's a big win for
Yeah,
him.
yeah, it
because
is.
Venom Page is a bad motherfucker. Monroe, Louisiana. Oh, interesting. Oh, it was in Montana? So they do have some in other states. Interesting. So one's in Montana, Monroe, Louisiana. Yeah, it's like I don't know how they sanction that. I don't know what the rules are in terms of, but I'm surprised that no one has come up with a bare knuckle MMA organization.
Used to be in the beginning, right? I mean,
Well, you have Letway, which is bare knuckle like Muay Thai style with headbutts. That's David Leduc, that fucking savage.
Yeah.
He's the king of that shit.
Yeah. I trained with him once.
He's a wild guy
We did
to
jiu-jitsu
watch.
together. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He came to Henzo's. He was like, he was in town for, I think we were at Masvidal versus Diaz was New York, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
I think it was that card, and he was in town, and he came to Henzo's the next day, and we did jiu-jitsu. He's like a blue belt, a purple belt. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's talking about doing some MMA. I think he's thought about doing it. He definitely entered into a grappling tournament. I saw some video of him in a grappling tournament strangling some people.
Yeah, he's not
It was
bad.
Fun. Not bad. He's a wild striker, though. I'll tell you that, man. And he's like one of the rare guys that like puts combinations together with headbutts. So like as he's holding pads, he headbutts the pads.
Yeah, he's got a good social media too.
Yeah.
Just like him, like breaking watermelons and shit with
Yeah.
headbutts.
what's his name? David Leduc?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can't
look him
be good for your head. That just can't. I mean, you're trying to. I mean, soccer players get CTE from that fucking
Just hitting the ball.
that light ass, bouncy ass ball.
didn't know
Imagine like slamming your head into Thai pads.
Yeah.
That can't be good for the noggin. I mean, I'd like to talk to him in a few years and just ask him what his memory's like. How many more years do you think that you can maintain this level of dedication? Have you thought about this?
Yeah. So it's all, number one, pending my health, particularly my stomach, which is like probably 70% better now.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like the last podcast, like I told you, like I literally have no idea what we talked about at all, besides me telling you that I was nauseous.
'Cause you were trying not
I
to
was
puke.
so nauseous. I was just like, come on, fucking hold
Tell
it
everybody
together.
what happened. So what happened was you got staph infection. Henzo's in New York City was notorious for giving people staph. That basement, because it got no sunlight. It was down there, and you got a bunch of savages out there strangling each other and
Yeah.
sweating in this puddle, and it just got funky, right? And so you got bad staph.
So I had recurring staph infections in 2018, and then I was taking oral antibiotics, and it just wiped out everything in my stomach, like all the good bacteria, everything. And then I had what ended up being a fungal overgrowth, a massive fungal overgrowth in my small intestine, and a huge bacterial imbalance in my stomach, and then H. pylori, which I had. But it was misdiagnosed as gastroparesis because I did a stomach emptying test where you eat like radioactive eggs, and they scan your stomach every X amount of like every half hour to see how it moves through the stomach. And I was emptying slow. And so they misdiagnosed as gastroparesis. I still have people message me every single day who like are catching up on the podcast. They're like, man, I just saw Joe. Tell me what you did for your gastroparesis. I'm like, I don't fucking have gastroparesis. But they misdiagnosed it. After like 4 years, I went to like all the best doctors in the country, and they're just useless. Like they just, oh, we'll do an endoscopy. I had one guy do a colonoscopy, and they're like, yeah, you look fine. And I was like, okay, well, if I can't get these doctors to figure it out, I guess I'm just going to deal with it. Hopefully it'll get better. And then it just got worse as time went on because the fungal overgrowth just started getting worse and worse. And then it was like affecting my kidney function, and it was just like awful. And then I had to like partially, I like took a leave of absence. I guess I like retired from grappling from a year because I couldn't even like function as a human being. Never mind, like I couldn't even like hold the conversation. I was so nauseous all the time.
Wow.
And then we were doing the podcast, and I was like traveling. I was like looking at houses in Austin because you convinced me to move to Austin. And I was here like eating restaurant food for like 3 days before, and we went to the podcast, and I was like, "Fuck, I can't even talk right now."
Because you used to have to eat very bland food.
Yeah,
Otherwise
but
you would-
even I would just wake up like 24/7 nauseous. Like the best way I can describe it is the worst hangover you ever had, like where you want to throw up to feel better but you can't. That's like my baseline, and then it gets worse from there. And then like imagine you go to training, and like now picture you have the worst hangover you've ever had, and you have to run a marathon 30 minutes later. Like the more tired you get, the worse it gets. So then I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And then somehow, like the stars aligned, and actually his doctor in California, because he had some bad stomach problems, he's like, you got to go to Dr. Rabar in California. And I saw him, and he's like, yeah, I don't think you have gastroparesis. I think you just have something in your small intestines, which is backing up into your stomach and causing like a bile and food backup, and that's why you're emptying slowly, and it's mimicking gastroparesis. So he did a bunch of tests that no one's ever done, and like my levels are like way off. Like one of the things was like normal was between like 0 and 5, and then high was like over 5 or over 10, and my level was like 555. It was just like 50 times what it was supposed to be. So so I've been on this treatment now for a year in October, and I'm like 75% better now. I can actually like hold a conversation. I can eat food. I can like do shit. And now I'm competing again. But
So are there cases in like medical literature that talk about people taking high levels of antibiotics over, because you took it over a 12-month period, right? You were constantly on antibiotics.
well, yeah, because so basically you take the antibiotics, and it wipes out the good bacteria in your stomach. And then your immune system's trying to fix that. So then your immune system's low. It's not as strong as it usually is. And I'm training all the time, so I'm always just run down. And then you get staph again. And then you take more antibiotics, and then it wipes out your stomach even worse. So then your immune system's on overdrive trying to fix it, and then you get staph again. So it's like a cycle where you just keep getting staph and keep fucking up your immune system in your stomach. So there was probably like a year period from like 2018 to 2019 where I think I was on antibiotics more than I wasn't for staph. I would like get staph and be like on 10 days, 2 weeks of medicine, and then 3 days later I'd have staph again, and I go back on antibiotics. Like it was just miserable.
And for anybody who's never taken antibiotics and tried to work out, it just drains you.
It just kills you. You have no cardio. You have nothing. So then I started using Hibiclens in the shower when I would train. It's like the soap that they use to wash their hands before surgery. It's like a super strong soap. And that helped a lot. And then I met his doctor, Dr. Rabar, and now that I'm getting better, I hardly ever get staph. I get like maybe like once every 6 months.
Do you use defense soap?
I don't.
I know John was skeptical of that, but it's because he hasn't seen the research on it. Like, defense soap is fucking legit.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it is it doesn't kill any of the bad bacteria, or the good bacteria,
Yeah,
rather.
that's the thing with Hibiclens is it wipes out everything.
That's not good.
But I'll try defense soap because like there was like a point where if I was like on the mats and I didn't use Hibiclens, I was guaranteed to get staph.
I will have them send it to you.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
my friend Guy Sacco, who runs the company, he created it because wrestlers, like they were working with wrestlers, and they were all getting staph. And so he did all this research into various essential oils and things that are good for healthy bacteria but kill off bad bacteria.
Yeah.
So it's got like eucalyptus oil and tea tree oil. And
Yeah,
all
I
this
would love
different
to try it.
And it also smells good. It's the only soap I use.
I'm gonna try
I
it.
use it every day. But it stopped for me. It stopped all staph, ringworm. I was getting it all the time. Well, not all the time, but I got staph twice, and I got ringworm probably 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
So you
And
don't
it was
get it like
annoying as
before.
fuck. I don't get it at all, and I wasn't getting it at all when I was using it on a daily basis. It just like it smells good.
Okay.
It's just better.
It's like regular soap, but it's
Yeah. And they have wipes. They have all kinds of shit. They have stuff that, like, even if you can't get to a shower immediately, they have these wipes that look like those butt wipes.
Yeah.
And you just fucking clean yourself
by.
off with them.
But yeah, I'd definitely love to try that. But to your original point of how long I'm going to compete for,
Right. But keep going on with that. So what did they do what was the medication to fix that?
So he just got to my house to do this show, and he's like, "What are all these fucking pills?" I literally have 30 pill bottles that I have to take twice a day, and it's just a combination of over the counter stuff to help me. There's nothing that's in there that's prescription, but he gave me. I'm on a strong oral antifungal. First I treated the H. pylori, and then I'm on a strong antifungal, and then all just immune and gut supporting medicines that just take time to rebuild the gut bacteria and flush out the fungus and the bad bacteria. So
I know we talked about this before in the last time, but have you ever said, I'm going to take a month and just do some serious hardcore fasting and see if that helps?
So I did do the fasting. It wasn't my choice. I just literally couldn't eat. But I did try to do probably about 3 weeks of fasting, and it didn't help. I think that I needed the medicine. The first success I had was when you introduced me to Brigham with the Ways to Well. So they gave me, a bunch of stuff which increased my appetite a lot and was helping. I was able to, because my main thing is keeping weight on and gaining size. I'm big, but I'm a small heavyweight. Depending on my stomach, I'd be 205, one day, and then I have a good month, and then I'm 225, 230, then I'm back to 210, and my weight would fluctuate based on how much I could eat. So they put me on this regimen, and they gave me a bunch of stuff that increased my appetite. So I got super big, but I was still getting nauseous. So it didn't fix the problem. I could eat more, but then I would just be nauseous after. So then I was using a combination of the Ways to Well stuff with his doctor, and now their stuff makes me more hungry, and I can actually eat food now. So everything's getting a little bit better. And I feel like I used to just eat 2 eggs, and I would just feel it sitting in my stomach. It just wouldn't filter down. So I would just be carrying food all day long. And then I'm trying to force feed myself to keep the weight on. And they actually did a test, and they're like, yeah, you're not only can you not eat, but your body's only absorbing 60% of the food that you actually do eat. So I was eating 10 times less than I was supposed to, and then just not absorbing half of it. So it's just a total disaster.
How much longer do you have to be on all this medication?
Well, I have I have to do a retest this week. I have to take a pee test and some blood work, and then I'm going to do a meeting with him on September 20th, right after ADCC. And then he's going to tell me where to go from there. We have to see what my levels are. But I'm sure he's going to keep me on a lot of the stuff. It's just overall stuff to help promote digestion and overall stomach function. But I'm just listening to what he says because everything he said so far has been accurate.
But a lot of the meds are over the counter, right?
They're all over the
counter.
Because
he's a medical doctor, but he's also a holistic guy as well.
An integrative guy.
Because I had stomach problems too. I went to UCLA. I went to Cedars. I even went to the emergency room 6 times because I thought I had a heart attack. And yeah, it's so much pressure in my chest, and they're like, "It's not your heart." So I went to every doctor. I go to this guy. He fixes me in 1 week, and it's been 7 years.
What was your issue?
I had a parasite.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So they thought, and I went to the best doctors in the world, and none of them could figure it out.
What kind of parasite was it?
I don't know what the exact name was, but I went to Mauritius, which is a very tropical island, and so I took antibiotics. I was cured in a week. So I know he's messed up because he's been over a year of treatment. So
that's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was
and still dominating everybody.
It was rough. I'm looking back now. I have no fucking idea how I did this. So we're doing tape study a lot of times, and we're doing tape study with my match against Lucas Barboza, and I'm talking about tactics. And so, right before the points part of the fight started, I set to guard, and I'm like, pause. So there's 20 of the guys watching the tape, and I'm like, you see, tactically here, I should have just kept hand fighting because he was getting really tired. He was way more exhausted than I was. I'm like, I should have just kept hand fighting and kept wrestling him. I would have broke him in the next few minutes. I'm like, but I was so goddamn nauseous that I had to just fucking sit to guard and recompose myself to get ready for the overtime because I fucking just couldn't wrestle anymore because I was so nauseous. So like a lot of stuff you see me do like isn't tactically correct, but I'm just like trying to manage the nausea through the match.
What's crazy that when you talk about if your health holds up, with most grapplers, they're like, oh, my back, my arm, my this, my that. But you, it's just a stomach thing.
Just my stomach for now, yeah. I mean,
So if that gets to 100%, how much longer do you think you can maintain this level of discipline and activity?
First is contingent upon John coaching. I'm not going to compete unless John's coaching.
Really?
Yeah.
So if he retires, you're done.
Yeah, I'm done. Or if he fucking gets into a car accident or something, then yeah. So,
Wow.
you know, John is a major part of this, so I won't do it without him. Nat is also a huge part of it. She runs the diet and the lifting and supplements and everything. So
That's such a giant advantage.
yeah, she's,
Having a girlfriend who really knows her shit when it
Yeah.
comes to like bodybuilding and
yeah,
weightlifting.
She's so probably without John or without her, I probably wouldn't do it. So as long as those two are there, I'll be doing it probably until I'm 40. I want to compete till I'm 40.
Wow.
Because
13 more years. That's wild.
yeah. Everyone's like, oh man, Gordon's in his peak now. It's like, no, like my peak is going to be like between 35 and 40. Because what people don't understand is most sports, you peak earlier because they're explosion-based sports. Football, explosion-based sport. Wrestling, explosion-based sport. But in jiu-jitsu, it's a sport built mostly around isometric tension. And my entire game already isn't a movement-based game. It's an isometric tension game. It's about negation of movement. I'm not athletic, so I don't try to make myself more athletic than the other guy. I try to make him less athletic than I am. So you peak, especially with my kind of game or like a Hodger kind of game, you peak much later. So instead of peaking where you have, you know, you're 28 and now your explosivity will decline after that age. It doesn't matter. My game isn't built around being explosive. It's built about being strong, built around being isometrically strong and negating movement. So you hit your isometric peak between the ages of 35 and 40 while you still maintain cardio. After 40, you start to diminish with the cardio. But between 35 and 40 is when I'll be my strongest, and I'll have another 10 to 15 years of technical development, which I've only been training for 12 years now. So I'll have twice as much technical development, and I'll be more physically mature by the time I'm 35. So that's the time where I'm really going to peak. It's not now at 27. It's 35 to 40.
Wow. That's wild. We just got to make sure we get more eyes on this fucking sport. That's the thing. It's just if guys like you, people like the Ruotolo brothers, people
100%.
like Mika Galvao, people who are submitting people, these young guys that are coming up, guys like Gary, exciting people to watch.
Margali's doing a real good job too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and amazing him coming over from Gi.
Yeah.
And now, like that fight with Lovato was amazing.
I mean,
To dominate him and almost finish him. It's really
you know
crazy.
what's crazy about that is Nicholas never did standing position ever in his life. No, not in the gi. He never wrestled. Never did anything. All that wrestling was like 2 months of wrestling with John.
That's
as his coach.
crazy.
I've never seen a gi guy transition to no gi like that. And he's been training, what, 5 months?
That's even less than that.
That's insane.
Just so smart the way he went to you guys. Just
Yeah.
such a smart move.
Yeah, he was willing. I mean, he's with it. Like he understands like what we're doing, and he has the same mindset of control that leads to submission. So he's like a perfect fit.
Have you seen like an uptick of people watching and people like who's number one in Flow? Have they noticed that there's like a steady increase in the amount of viewership?
100%. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The problem is a lot of jiu-jitsu is just painful to watch.
Right.
That's
Like the gi is rough. John-Jacques Machado said that. He goes, man, the gi is so boring. Even I don't like.
This last Who's Number One was the me and Penna was the biggest flow grappling show ever by a landslide. It was bigger than 2019 ADCC.
Wow.
So now this ADCC is gonna like blow everything out of the water.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a huge increase.
So when you say big, like how many people tuned in?
I don't know the numbers.
They don't give you
but-
the metrics.
They don't tell you?
No.
Oh,
No.
they're like Netflix?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck out of here.
But I
Tell
know.
me the numbers.
I know, but they just like it was like they said it was bigger by a landslide. So
But the problem with the gi though is it's competitor based. They're never gonna. I just don't see them ever getting massive amounts of people to go watch. They'll always have a lot of competitors. Like last weekend, I think they had 5,000 or 6,000 competitors, but they're never gonna get spectators. It's just there's too much education to appeal to the masses, in my opinion.
the best part is that people will never admit this and they fucking hate it. I think I'm the only person who can save gi jiu-jitsu. Like if I started competing in the gi, that's the only way people would watch it. But no one will ever say that.
Have you have thought about doing that, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna start. Mostly, I just want to learn how to teach in the gi, just so I can, if I ever have a school or something, I can teach students. So, I'm confident in the gi now. Like I train with Marigali in the gi and other black belt world champions, so I know where I stand. But I don't feel like I can teach gi jiu-jitsu as good as I can teach no gi jiu-jitsu. So I'm gonna start training in the gi after ADCC just recreationally, and then if I want to compete, then I'll do a match here and there. But I definitely want to start training in the gi just to sharpen up the teaching and everything.
Could you imagine if you won a gi world title? Oh my gosh.
Well, that would also be a great way to get people to compete against you, because they would probably jump at that.
Yes,
Like there's a
yeah.
lot of gi guys that are experts in collars and sleeves.
I've seen him in the gi. People, they don't believe him. I'm like, he's really good in the gi. I've seen it with my own eyes.
They just think you
I'm
lose your
sure.
power as you put on a gi. That's not how it fucking works.
No,
It's
like
you-
Jean-Jacques Machado used to tell me, because Jean-Jacques only has one hand.
Yeah.
So when he transitioned to Abu Dhabi, it was very easy for him. He goes, because he never grabs. Like his game is all overhooks and underhooks, but he was elite in the gi and elite in no gi with basically the same game.
Yeah.
He was so good though.
Oh, Jean-Jacques' a bad motherfucker.
Like all my entire game is like, if you're standing and I'm on bottom, you go into ashigarami. Well, if I have pants to grab and I'm in ashigarami, it's going to be easier to knock you down.
Yeah.
If you're on your knees, then I go butterfly sweep with sumigeshis. If I can get to a belt and pull you onto me, I
Right.
can hit sumigeshis easier. And then it's forcing half guard from top position. And if I can get to half guard and I can feed a lapel and use a stronger crossface, I can pass your guard easier.
Yeah.
And then mount and back, there's just more friction to hold people and more collars to strangle with. It's just the main thing that fucks me up is like if I get caught in like a spider guard or lasso guard, like with an expert who like can like keep my grips and not allow me to start flanking the legs, and I get caught like in a deep spider guard or something. It's kind of annoying. But people are just idiots and just think that you just lose all of your jiu-jitsu if you take the gi off or put the gi on.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. But they're hoping. But at least you could trick them
Yes,
into
yeah,
competing
yeah,
with you
yeah.
for a little while.
I don't think we've ever seen a no gi guy go to gi though. Like a strictly no gi guy. I can't think of one.
No.
It's always been gi to no gi.
Yeah, no, I don't.
So
I
gi's
don't
more technical.
right.
That's
Got to train in the gi to be good at no gi.
Well, that was always a weird thing where MMA fighters would tell me that their instructor made them train the gi. I go, explain how that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And Eddie Bravo would say, like, okay, now imagine if you were supposed to be playing the U.S. Open for tennis, and they said, my friend, you got to learn racquetball.
Yeah.
And like, what?
It's
Why would I?
different.
It's a fucking. There's a wall. Why am I playing racquetball?
Yeah.
No,
Imagine
they got to get more technical.
imagine in the Olympic training center they just bring in gis for the wrestlers to wear.
Right.
Like you're gonna do judo today.
I always thought that combat sambo was so strange because they're wearing headgear and shin pads
Yeah.
and
And the
MMA gloves
shorts.
and a fucking and shorts, but with a kimono top.
Yeah, that's
Odd.
out
right?
there.
Yeah, that's what Federer was in.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
That's what he came from.
Yeah, I mean that was his. He was a world champion in that.
But my career is rolling around on the ground, so I can't really talk shit.
So you think by the time you're 40, then you'll be done? Where do you think the sport will be by then? I mean, if you really look into the future in 13 years, how big do you think can it grow?
I think there's gonna be some money. I mean, the problem is like I'm trying the best I can, but I'm one guy. So like I'm trying. I mean, there's a trickle down effect, so everyone's gonna get paid. Everyone who fights me gets paid like twice as much. So athletes will make more, but I think that it is possible to bridge the gap into a spectator sport. I think there's always going to be a cap on how many people will watch it. Like it's never going to be as big as the UFC, but I think it'll be a lot bigger than it is. And I think that we can start getting people to get paid well as like real athletes for matches. Like I think that I'll be making 7 figures a fight, and other people will be making 6 figures a fight, so that people can compete and not have to worry. Like they can just compete and be athletes. Like right now, if you want to make a career, you have to own a school or you have to teach seminars. You have to do something else. You can't just be a competitor. Like for most people, now if I'm competing, I can be like, I'm the first guy I think who can just make a career and be rich off just competing. But that we're a long way off to have anybody else be able to do that.
How much of an impact has? I know you just recently started using a cold plunge. How much of an impact has that had on your recovery?
Yeah, so I had the Morozco, and we were talking about it, and Brigham had one, and for those of you who don't know, I fucking hate cold water. Like if it's
Who doesn't?
If it's not like if it's below 80 degrees, I won't get in.
Below 80 degrees.
So I'm like talking to Rogan. He's like been trying to convince me since I met him. He's like, sauna, cold plunge, heat shock proteins, try it, bro. And I'm like, so then one day I'm like, oh fuck. So then our friend at Roca was doing an ice bath, and it was like one of the ones that you like pour the ice into, like just a bucket, and then you pour the ice in. So I like said it, I got in it, and I was like, oh, this is fucking terrible. And I sat in it for like 5 minutes, and I got out, and then I messaged Rogan. I'm like, I just did an ice bath. He's like, which one? I'm like, I just poured some ice in. He goes, yeah, it's fucking weak shit. You can only get it to like the high 40s. You can't get it down to freezing.
Oh my
and I'm
God.
like, okay, so I'll try a real one, I guess. But I felt, I don't really feel physically a lot better, but I feel so mentally sharp after I do it.
Yeah.
I feel like very calm for the rest of the day, for like the next 24 hours. And I feel just like if I want to go to sleep, because I basically just had a fucking panic attack, I can warm up and then I can go to sleep,
Yeah.
or I can like wake up and like do shit that I have to do. So then I tried Brigham's at like 30 degrees, and I sat for 3 minutes. And I fucking got out. I was like on a different planet. I was
Yeah,
like
that's the
hallucinating
Morozco one. Yeah.
and shit. And it was like actually freezing. There's ice floating around. I was like, oh my god, that was terrible. But then I felt really good after. And so now I do them like 5 times a week. Probably I do it like 5 times a week. I just got it, and I sit in usually 3-4 minutes, and I did 7 one time, and I could have did more. I should have did more, but you gotta like be in the mood to go for a record.
Yeah, I did it once for 20, but I did it because I filmed it and I put it on Instagram.
20?
I was like, I just want to see how long I could go.
Wow.
So I just filmed
Yeah.
it and I did 20. It was fucking horrible. And I couldn't warm up for the rest of the day. I drove to work.
just
It was 95 degrees outside in Texas. I drove to work with no AC on, my windows rolled up, shivering.
Yeah, we did it the other day. I had like a barbecue at my house, and one of the guys who's here filming for Future Kimonos, my sponsor, he's like a cameraman, and he's never done an ice bath before. So he gets in, and I'm like sitting down. I just did it, so I was sitting by the fire, warming up, and I look back like fucking, I don't know, it felt like a half hour later, and he was still in there. And I'm like, how long has he been in there? They're like 12 minutes. I'm like, oh fuck. So he gets out, and he's like, yeah, I could have did longer, but I don't know. I just figured I would get out. So I'm like, okay. So I don't think anything of it. Like 2.5 hours later, he comes up to me, and he's wrapping the towel still in his underwear, just shaking. And he's like, do you have a shower I can use? And I'm like, yeah, man, go in the bathroom. He sat in the shower with the like, water as hot as it could go for like an hour. And he comes out, he's like, okay, I'm a little bit better now. Like still shaking.
When you
What's
go
the-
from cold plunge to sauna, it feels amazing.
Oh, because you warm up like instantly. Yeah.
Well, it takes a couple minutes, but I mean, the 185 degree sauna feels like nothing.
Is that
Yeah.
okay to do though? I always
Yeah.
thought it was hot to cold, but you can go cold to hot. No
Yeah,
problem.
it's okay if you're not a pussy. Yeah, you go. You should always end on cold though.
Okay.
You end on cold because the idea is you want your body to reheat
And
itself.
what temperature do you do for the cold plunge? Because I hear different things. You should do 40, 50 for a couple minutes. He's got it at 36.
Yeah, we have a 34 at the house, and the blue cube that I have here in the studio. I love. It's a little different than the Morozco because the water circulates, so it's even more uncomfortable. And that's 37 degrees. But I can't differentiate between getting in that at 37 degrees and the Morozco at 34. It feels the same to me. Because obviously 3 degrees is nothing.
Yeah.
But that one thing that does feel different is the circulation of water. So when you get in the blue cube, you're like, Jesus, what the fuck is it? It's like it's more uncomfortable.
Yeah, if you move in the Morozco,
Yeah.
you feel it like, I feel like, oh fuck, I'm getting cold way faster.
Yeah, like when I check my watch to see what time it is, how long I've been in there for, like just the movement, like then your hands like fuck.
Someone commented the other day on my Instagram, like, to like move around more because apparently when you sit still, your body creates like a thermal layer where it like, I don't know, apparently you don't get as cold. And
Yeah.
like move around. So I started like moving around and I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit still down.
That's where the blue cube is really excellent because the blue cube is the water's always moving,
Yeah.
so you don't ever get that thermal layer.
I'm trying to convince him to do it. Oh fuck! I wish we could play.
My God.
I wish we so he had his girlfriend go in this in the thing. It's fucking hilarious. So I'm like, so Rogan has this rule. I'm like, he fucking invites people to his house, and he's like, I'll give you $1,000 to do a minute. I'm like, you should do it with Lena. He goes, okay. He's like, there's no way she'll be able to do it. I'm like, I don't know. Money's a pretty big motivator for Lena. So he's like, I'll give you $1,000 to do it for a minute. She's like, $1,000? He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. So she gets in. I'm like trying to coach her. I'm like, nice deep breath. I'm like, she gets in. She's like, oh my fuck. Okay. So she's like shivering. And I'm like, nice deep breaths. Take it easy. She's just screaming, $1,000. $1,000. Turn it off. And she gets in. It's like 15 seconds. She's like, how many minutes? How many minutes has it been? How many minutes? And I'm like, it's been like 10 seconds. And she's like, $1,000, $1,000. And she makes it through the minute, and she gets out, and she's like on the floor, like in the blanket, like all like shivering.
My daughter's 12-year-old friends did it. I had 3 of her friends come over, and I go, if you guys go in there for 1 minute, I'll give you $1,000. And their eyes are lighting up. They're thinking of toys and all the shit they're gonna buy.
Did they make it?
Yeah, man, they all did it.
Wow.
They all did it. One of my daughter's friends' sister, who's 9, did it. 9 years old. She jumped in there for a minute. Just
Joe's way of just calling
gritting
you a
her
pussy.
teeth.
I know. Now I have to do it.
She's just gritting her teeth, thinking about toys. I gave it to them in $100 bills, too. Nice, crisp, clean $100 bills. They like looking at it like, this is amazing.
I go home. Joe Rogan just gave me this.
Yeah, they're like, what if I do 2 minutes? I go, then you get 2,000. It's going to give them $1,000 a minute, but no one ever did more than a minute.
When do you do it? Do you like first thing in the morning
Right
or
before I get
post-training?
here. Right before I get here. So I work out. I worked out this morning, and then right after I work out, I go right into the sauna. I do 20 minutes in the sauna, and then I do 3 minutes into the cold plunge. That's my general daily routine.
What about post-training? Does it help with
Yeah.
lactic acid?
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, it flushes your system in a wild way, right? Because your circulation, like when you're in 185-degree sauna, and it's really hot, man. That last 10 minutes is rough.
185?
Yeah, the last 10 minutes is rough, and I throw water on the rocks too, so it's fucking
We were
hot and
at
moist.
Brigham's. We were just supposed to do like 20 minutes. It's like me, Nat, Justin Wren, and Brigham. Like the 4 of us like smashed into this 4-person sauna, which like we barely fit in because we're all huge. And he's got the timer outside. Like the timer doesn't go off. So we're like fucking 27 minutes in. We're like, how long have we been in here? And it's like, oh man, we're like 7 minutes over. I'm like, oh perfect. Well, I'm about to have a heat stroke.
I used to do 25. I was doing 25 for a while, but I would just be so tired after it was over. I felt like I was doing too much. Like the time was too much. It was like I'd passed the point of diminishing returns. So
Yeah.
I feel like for me, it seems like 185 degrees, 20 minutes, and then as far as cold plunge, 3 minutes seems like the magic number. Occasionally, I'll do 5 minutes. One thing I will do, though, if I go back and forth, then I'll do more sauna time. So I'll do like 20 minutes in the sauna, and then I'll do 3 minutes in the cold plunge, and then I'll do another 20 minutes in the sauna. And by the time that 20 minutes is up, I'm barely suffering. And then I'll do another 2 minutes in the cold plunge, and I end it always on cold.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Always end on cold.
Always end on cold.
Because
right.
it's easier to end on hot, because it just warms you up, and you're like, okay, I'm done. But when you end on cold, then you're like, fuck, and you make your body heat itself back up, and
Makes
that's where you
sense.
get a lot of the
sauna is what I'm missing. Like I feel like if I do like a hard workout, like in my gym, I have to like take like 10 minutes at least to cool down before I can get into the cold plunge. I'm just like, my body's like, just like so shocked. I feel like if I just sat in the sauna and relaxed for like 20 minutes after the workout, it would be a lot better to then move into the ice bath.
It also increases your red blood cell count. It has a mild EPO-like effect.
Wow.
And it also maintains your heart rate. So if you do a hard training session and you have elevated heart rate, and then you go straight into the sauna, it maintains an elevated heart rate. Like I've gone in the sauna with one of them chest straps on, the MyZones chest straps, and it was reading 140 beats per minute just sitting there in the sauna.
Yeah.
Because I'd gone right from working out and gone. It's so fucking hot. Like you don't get a chance to like completely cool down. So your body's pumping all that blood
It's
to
like
try
an
to cool
extra
you down.
20-minute workout
It
essentially.
is, exactly. While you're static, you're just sitting there.
And your heart rate doesn't go down. It just stays pretty much, slowly.
Well, it does go down slowly, but not when you're in there at 185 degrees for 20 minutes because you're fucking suffering. So when you're suffering, you're like, like when I looked at my watch and I see like I'm only at 12 minutes and I know it's 8 minutes to go and I'm like, fuck. This is rough.
That's me in the ice bath. I don't even look at the timer.
Yeah.
I'm just counting the seconds. It's so much worse. I'm like, fuck, 5 seconds only went by.
Yeah, it's hard, but the benefits are really worth it. The benefits for your immune system and then mental clarity, as you're talking about.
I just feel so sharp mentally after. Like, I'm like having all these ideas pop into my head. I'm like answering emails I was like procrastinating. So it's been good for me. For sure.
Yeah.
I have one at the house. I got to use it once.
You don't
finally.
use it?
I've never used it once.
You just have it sitting there?
Now that my girlfriend uses it, I have to. So
He's like, we have one of these in Puerto Rico. I'm like, how is it? He's like, I don't know, I never used it.
It's like you have to use
and my
it.
girlfriend just did what? 2 minutes yesterday. Now she's hooked.
Are you still in Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Are you staying there?
Yeah, I love it.
Fuck taxes, right?
I just always go back and forth, Puerto Rico, Miami. Yeah.
So what for taxes, you have to spend like 51% of your time there or something
Yeah,
crazy like that?
183 days. But I always hit like 210, 215.
Yeah?
I like it. I just get away from everybody, and it's very relaxing. So
That's dope.
I'm a homebody, so I'm not one of those guys who has to go out all the time.
I
so.
thought it was pretty gangster you guys moving your entire organization to Puerto Rico because they wouldn't let you train in New York.
Yeah.
How
Had
crazy
to
is
move
that?
somewhere.
Looking back on that now, how fucking crazy was all that?
Dude, I saw it. I
Tell
know.
you can't do jujitsu.
Did.
What? Like the government's gonna come in and tell you you're not allowed to train.
I know a lot of people who lost their
And
businesses.
now COVID's
Oh,
still,
yeah, me too.
COVID's still around, and all the people who were yelling at you are just walking around like it's normal now.
How about that Dr. Lena Wen, the lady from CNN, is now telling everybody that her children's verbal skills, their speech development was hampered by wearing a mask. Like, yeah, they could have told you that.
Oh, they said that? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
speech experts would have told you that. This is terrible for children. Like this idea that you're just going to like, with no problem whatsoever, stop society.
I mean, has there been any studies that show the masks were effective? I mean,
N95 masks
N95.
have an effect, but none of them are 100% effective. And it's a respiratory disease. Respiratory disease is spread, period. End of discussion. If you talk to virologists, they'll tell you you cannot contain a respiratory disease. I mean, you could like protect yourself if you're in an area where there's like a heavy spread and you have an N95 mask that's properly fitted. It will have an impact. But, you know, the most important thing is to protect your immune system. And that's the least discussed aspect of the fucking pandemic.
Just be healthy.
Yeah, don't be fat. Don't be fat. Take a lot of vitamins. Vitamin D deficiency is a giant problem. At one point in time, they did a study which showed that 84% of the people in the ICU were deficient in vitamin D.
the funny thing is, I thought obesity would be the number one. It was actually, I believe, vitamin D.
Yeah, it was like 78% was obesity, and 84% was.
And what they do, they just had everyone go inside.
Yeah,
No one-
perfect. Let's get fatter and paler.
I was in Europe last year. I got a ticket for not wearing a mask outdoors.
Oh my god.
Dude, he sent me this voice note.
I was so
I was
pissed.
about to crack my phone in half. He's like, yeah, they stopped me outside and they gave me a fucking ticket. I'm like, can I just imagine if I was in that scenario? Like some fucking cop telling me, hey, I'm going to give you this fucking $400 ticket.
I'm going to give you a
because-
ticket for not wearing something that doesn't even work.
Yes.
Outdoors.
Yeah, and now that they know that they don't work, like they've talked about it on CNN. I mean, like that same lady, that Dr. Lena Wen, just said that it's like facial decorations. That a regular cloth mask is like facial decorations.
And they increase the chances you get bacterial pneumonia, right?
Yeah.
Because if you wear the same mask over and over again, it just traps all the
Yeah,
bacteria
these-
onto the mask.
Fucking gross people. They're not cleaning that thing. It smells like your bad breath. I know you got to get out of here at 2:00, right?
We're okay.
You good?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're
We
fine.
keep going. Yeah, the fact that you guys had to do that and that you had to move the entire organization down to Puerto Rico was just. I love that you did it, but it was like, wow, what a crazy sign of the times.
We had to move somewhere because we didn't know like what was going to happen in Austin. Like, if, places were going to shut down. And at least moving there, we had a place to train. So
Yeah.
I was like, we'll move there, and then that was going to be like a 3 to 5 year thing. And then we were trying to open up a school, and
Oh
we
my
just
gosh.
couldn't open up a school.
Disaster.
Dude,
I
this-
went to a shopping center. There's 40 outlets. 2 of them are occupied. I tried for a year to open a school. It was like impossible. I'm like, they wouldn't return my calls. Like, it was impossible to work. I'm like, guys, this is just, I don't know what to
This is a
do.
little too relaxed down
Yeah,
there.
this
That's the problem with living in paradise.
island time,
Yeah,
So
island time's real.
it was just impossible.
How much of a jiu-jitsu scene is there now? Like, did you guys
Over there?
because you guys went there, and I mean, how many people stayed and kept training?
They had jujitsu there. I mean, I think some of them were upset, to be honest. They're
That
like,
you guys showed up?
they're like, how are we going to compete with these guys? You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So, but it's not too big there.
But I mean, everyone who moved there with us moved back here, and then a couple of the guys, like 3 of the guys, we have Fernando, Luis, and Juan, who have lived their whole lives in Puerto Rico. Like Fernando's almost 40; he's been there his whole life, and they moved to Austin with us.
Oh, wow.
To train. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, we were training out of our buddy's gym. He actually used he used the gym for one of his camps that where he brings guys down. And then it was called Combat 360, and we were just training there for the year, trying to open up a gym, which he was like hammering away trying to get people to help us, and it just was literally impossible to do any sort of business.
John was going to strangle one of these guys. So me and John go together, and this guy's like trying to charge us.
John just has no patience for incompetence.
So we meet with
just fucking talking to everybody there, which is the problem.
We meet with this the owner of the shopping center, and 40 stores, 2 of them were occupied. He's trying to charge us like $250 a square foot. So John just like looks like he's about to kill this guy. He's like, "You're trying to charge me Manhattan prices for this." And I told the guy, I'm like, "Look around. Like, we'll bring you, if we get 400 students here, we're going to bring you footfall." Wouldn't budge. Then I was like, "All right, guys, it's just not going to work here."
Then I was like, I did the show with Rogan. I talked to him for like a half hour, just like probably most of his friends, and he convinced me to move to Austin. I'm like, Rogan has this thing where every one of his friends, he's like, "Come on, bro, just fucking make the move."
It's the greatest city ever.
It's really, I love Austin.
It's so great, and there's only 1 million people here.
For now.
You get around. Where are they gonna go? Fucking, you have to build.
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
no houses available, and when you get around, it's so easy. Me coming from LA, everything was a fucking hour. Everything.
I'm from LA too, yeah.
Go to the Comedy Store at 8 o'clock at night. Takes an hour. Like everything, it should take 22 minutes from my house. It takes an hour. Everything takes an hour. And plus, in the morning, you want to fucking shoot yourself.
Dude, LA's the worst.
It's crazy. Going down to Orange County is death. It takes hours. It would take us 2-3 hours to take my kids to Disneyland. It was crazy.
It takes an hour just to get from LA to LA. It's just,
and if the shit goes down, if something happens, if there's an earthquake, if something goes down, you're not getting anywhere. You're not getting out of there. There's just too many fucking human beings. Also, people devalue people when there's that many people.
100%.
People become like a problem. They don't become like a valuable asset. Like, oh, this is my community of people. That's my neighbor Bob. Hey, Bob. No, it becomes all these fucks. Look at all these fucks in front of me.
New York, same way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But people in Texas are so nice. Like
They're the nicest.
Anywhere you go, it doesn't even matter.
They're all fucking armed.
Dude, we fucking pull up to Terry Black's the other day. There's like a fucking 100-person line. I park like right in front. A dude fucking runs out. He's like, "I knew it was you. I knew it was your truck." He's like, "Come on in, we're gonna take care of you." They fucking cut the whole line. They fucking,
that's awesome.
Got us all everything we needed, and was like, "You guys need anything? Like, please let us know." And I was like, "No, it's okay." But
those guys are great.
They're also helpful.
Terry Black's is the shit.
I eat it every single time I
God
come to
damn,
Austin.
those beef ribs are preposterous. They're so good. They're sausages and brisket. And I love barbecue. I'm so happy to be here. There's just so much good shit about this town, and then there's so many comedy clubs here, and I've talked so many comedians into moving here now.
Yeah, dude, he loves fucking comedy. I'm taking him to see Kill Tony tonight.
Oh, you're gonna have a great
Yeah,
time.
the only thing I like doing, because I'm from LA, but not too much of a fan as I used to be. But the only thing I like doing there is going to the Comedy Store. So every time I'm there, I go like 3-4 times a week.
Yeah,
So,
the Comedy Store is awesome, but we're recreating something like
I
that
heard.
here. We have an amazing scene. I mean, there's like 12 world-class comedians that have already moved here.
That
And
live in Austin full time?
that move here. And we don't even have, the main comedy club is still being built. My place is still being built.
well, I'll definitely be stopping.
But
by
we'll be
all the time.
ready somewhere around January, right? The turn of the 2023, we should be ready.
Is it going to be multiple rooms? Or
Yeah, we got a couple rooms. Yeah, it's going to be fun. And then there's a lot of other good spots around here, too. Like there's a Creek in the Cave. It's a great room. The Vulcan, where we're at Tuesday and Wednesday nights every week. That's a great room. Then there's Cap City Comedy Club reopened, the Domain. So Austin has a booming scene. It's a great place for stand-up. It's just like they're fun crowds, too, man. They're not fucked up
Dude,
and woke and
LA, like,
annoying. And
I was in the Comedy Store one time. Mark Maron is performing. This guy gets up, like starts yelling at him, and it's Mark Maron. It's not Andrew Schultz or Anthony Jeselnik. And this guy looked like he was like on a gram of test.
What's
And
he yelling at him for?
He's yelling at him because Mark Maron made some Jewish joke. And he finally stops the bit.
Mark's
He's like,
Jewish.
That's what he says to the guy. He's like, "Bro, relax. I'm Jewish too." And this guy's like, "It's not funny," and stuff like that. I'm just looking like, who goes to a comedy club with that mindset?
Self-righteous twats. LA's filled with these fucking virtue signaling douchebags.
Yeah.
They're filled with people that want to show everybody how righteous and ethical and moral they are.
That's why I love Tony. Because Tony just doesn't tolerate it at all. He just fucking crushes you the second anything happens.
He's the greatest host of a podcast, like a live podcast ever. He's the best at it.
It's just
Tony,
crazy.
that show.
He's
Kill
so
Tony,
fast.
No one's faster.
I used to see him in the
He's the
comedy
best.
the comedy store all the time, and I'd be dying laughing, but people would just like the looks on their face. They'd be
Oh,
so
he goes
pissed
hard
off.
in the paint.
Oh, he.
But if that's what you like, he's your guy.
Yeah, the dark humor
Yeah.
just kills me every time.
No, he's an animal. And so, he's out here. Tom Segura's out here. Christina Pazitsky's
Tom's
out here.
here?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Tim Dillon. Brian Simpson just moved here. David Lucas is here. Hans Kim is here. Duncan Trussell's here. We got a lot of fucking comics here right now.
Gosh, that's
It's
amazing.
fun. It's fun. So every Tuesday and Wednesday night, it's a party at the Vulcan.
I can't
Such a
wait.
good time.
I mean, I love stand-up comedy. It's just weird to me because like I remember growing up watching Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and when he's ripping on Arabs and stuff like that, me and my brother were just dying. We'd be like, yeah, he's ripping on us now, It'd be like and we're like, we made it.
That's funny. That's
Now
funny.
everyone's just like, they think like being offended is like a badge of honor.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's something like it's social media. Social media fucked everybody's head up because everybody had an opinion now.
Yeah.
Everybody had an opinion
The
that
worst
you could
people.
see. The most complaining.
Yeah, the people who don't have any accomplishments and just have all day to spend on Instagram. Those are the people who are most heard.
That is what the problem is that they have the time to do that. And it's a great distraction from accomplishing anything in your real life. If
Yeah.
you just spend all your time complaining about shit, you feel like you're getting something done.
My thing is intent. It's obviously they're just performing. Like, do you really believe, like Chappelle, like, do you really believe he's just a bad person? Like, it just doesn't make
They
any
don't
sense.
care if they really believe that. They care if they can pretend that they believe that so that they have a target, so that
Yeah.
they can pour all their outrage at, and it makes them look more virtuous. But it's really just about cutting someone down to make yourself look better. If you look at the content of what Chappelle put out that they criticized, it's not transphobic at all.
I've seen it 6 times. Not.
Yeah, he's genius. It's great that he does it and that they attack him because it shows how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
Because then people watch and they go, "What the fuck are you complaining about? Like, what is going on? Like, this is comedy. Like, comedy without victims can be pretty fucking boring.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like someone's gonna take the hit, kids.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because everyone they try to cancel who just doesn't apologize,
You just get bigger.
they just get way bigger.
Yeah, you just get bigger.
But, I
just
mean,
don't quit.
They canceled one of Chappelle's shows, right? Like they went to the venue and he had to.
Oh, that didn't mean anything.
No,
Those
I
are-
know. No, I know it doesn't.
But those were
but-
silly people that worked there. They're like,
Oh, they were the
we will
employees?
not, we will not stand for this. And so he went to another place right across the street. Like, it was right down the street.
It's just crazy to me because
Last minute change of venue.
when I grew up, if you didn't like something, you just don't watch it. But that's not enough for them. It's
It's just these
Nobody can
fucking
watch it now.
people,
like
man.
no one can watch it. It's just-
Everybody's special now. This is what happens when you give kids participation trophies for getting their ass kicked at soccer. They grow up and they think everybody's special. No one's a loser. No, everyone's amazing. Your opinion's valid. You need to be heard. You need to speak your truth. Go speak your truth. And everybody's like, I need to be heard. We can't tolerate this in our community. Meanwhile, you're ready to turn on the next person. You're ready to turn on. They'll never be woke enough. No one will ever be woke enough. When they'll push the boundaries until they eliminate everybody who's not this far left, and then they'll go further left. They'll go full communist.
They'll never be satisfied. Though.
Never.
That's the point.
That's the problem because they're malcontents. These are not like normal, healthy, rational people with good lives and that are successful.
Didn't Kevin Hart apologize for years ago, like for that bit, and it wasn't enough.
It didn't matter. And he
Didn't
said he
matter.
wasn't going to apologize again. He's like,
shouldn't
I'm
have.
not apologizing again. I did it a long time ago. Like, I'm a good person.
And
These are
they
just
don't-
jokes.
They don't want apologies because whenever someone apologizes, then they actually get canceled.
Well, what they want is you to bend the knee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bend the knee.
Power. Yeah.
It's just a weird time for people and their opinions, because it's so easy to get an opinion magnified. Like, if you have an opinion and then a bunch of people retweet that opinion And, you see people, they spend all day on Twitter just posting their opinions on things and bitching about shit.
That's why I love Chappelle. He's like, I don't give a fuck about Twitter. It's
He's
not,
not
it's
on
not a
it.
real place.
Yeah, it's not a real place. Well, it's a real mental institution. That's what it is. If you like, no bullshit. If you collectively looked at the people that post the most on Twitter, and then you looked at the amount of medication those people are taking, and the amount of therapy those people are taking, and the amount of anxiety and mental illness those people have, it's not representative of the general population. It's
Not
a
at all.
sick group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. Like, why should Andrew Schultz or Jassim fans not be able to go watch the show? I just don't understand that. Why should an adult not be able to go enjoy something that you don't? It makes
Because
no
people
sense.
are crazy. It literally makes no sense. But it's also people that don't have like real struggle, like physical struggle in their life. One of the things you find out
just
about
make up
jiu-jitsu
problems.
people, jiu-jitsu is one of the best medicines for a human being because the exercise is so fucking difficult. It's so hard to get good at jiu-jitsu, and then training is so hard that like everything else is kind of easy.
You have like a real problem.
yeah.
Like, you're not fucking worried about bitching when someone's trying to break your arm.
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
Just like people who don't. Everyone's so comfortable now; they don't have real problems, so they just make up imaginary issues to complain about in their head.
What they need to do is get some imaginary real problems like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's not a real problem like you have to do it, but you should do it. And
Yeah.
if you do it, you'll be better at the other things you do.
Yeah,
and you'll be
100%.
better at coping. Just your cope because you're dealing with real adversity. Someone's fucking mounting you, trying to strangle you. Like that's real adversity.
Yeah.
It's not a microaggression at the office.
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu is tough out of the combat sports because basically you just get your ass kicked for the first 3-6 months. And
That's what people
That's what you need, and you
Yeah.
don't even know what's happening.
There's
It's-
so many people out there thinking they're the shit.
Yeah.
They're nothing.
Yeah.
They need to know they're nothing. They need to know that they're basically helpless. And that's what's. I remember the first time I ever went into jiu-jitsu class. I was at Carlson Gracie's, and this purple belt just fucking raped me, just manhandled me. He wasn't even bigger than me. He was the same age as me. Too. I had no disadvantage.
Yeah, you couldn't rationalize
There
it
was
at all.
no rational, and I was like, I know how to fight. I used to kickbox. I can fight. I was a Taekwondo champion. I can fight. And this guy was just doing whatever he wanted to me, and it was like, wow. And I remember leaving there going, well, that's important to know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that was real. I didn't know that I was that. I thought, well, bigger people could probably kick my ass, and world championship black belts could probably kick my ass, but a regular person, no. It's like that's good for you. Getting your ass kicked like that is fucking good for you because you gotta break it down before you could build it up.
And it's like as close to a superpower as you can get.
Oh yeah.
Like grappling or fighting a normal person who has like no martial arts experience
Oh my God.
is like literally playing with a child.
Yeah.
Like you see like bodybuilders grappling like jiu-jitsu guys, and it's like doesn't matter. They look like children playing with their dad.
Do you remember the old no rules fight with Pedro Sauer? Pedro Sauer fought this bodybuilder, this
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
giant jack bodybuilder.
He was under Hickson.
Yes.
I remember that. The
Yeah.
big monster.
Yeah, it's like a famous old school, like one of them dojo matches.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's another one of those cases where we were talking about like the early days of MMA, like recognizing that jiu-jitsu is really like the only martial arts that delivers as promised.
Yeah.
Like a small technical person can defeat a larger untrained person.
Yeah.
That's what it showed. I mean, I always heard for the UFC 1, they purposely picked Hoist instead of like Hickson or something like that because of his muscular stature.
Sort of.
Is that true? Or?
There's a little bit of that. And also, they couldn't control Hickson. Like, no one could tell Hickson what to do.
Yeah.
Hickson was not playing any games. And Horian, I think, had a lot more control of the situation if Hoist was his champion. But the idea was, if anybody ever beat Hoist, then you throw in Hickson.
Yeah.
And he mauls everybody.
Because Hoyler and Hickson had much more impressive competitive careers.
Hoyler certainly did.
Yeah.
But Hoyler obviously was much
Small.
smaller.
Yeah,
you
too
know.
small, I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, he competed at Abu Dhabi at 45, right?
Yeah,
145.
exactly. So
All right, so tell everybody one more time. It's on Flow Grappling. Tell everybody the dates.
ADCC 2022, September 17 and 18 in the Thomas and Mack Arena, Las Vegas.
Awesome. Fantastic. Gordon, you're the fucking man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.